We are past the 2 o'clock hour, so I'll ask everyone to please find a seat if you haven't already and wrap up any conversations you may be having so that I can go ahead and call to order our Seminole County Board of County Commissioners meeting for July 25th, 2023. Today we have leading us in our invocation past Chaplain Dan Royer from Ethos 360. If you would all please stand for the invocation and pledge.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we're grateful to you for this opportunity to be here today, and we ask your blessings upon this assembly. We ask your guidance. You ask wisdom, insight into each one of the issues that will be presented, and Lord, just draw these folks together as they consider each one of the aspects that's before them, and give them wisdom and good insight to each matter. For it's in Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Would you all please join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have a proclamation and 3 resolutions on our agenda this morning, and for those of you who may not have been here in the past when we have done these, each commissioner who has a proclamation or resolution to present will do that. We will then let whoever the recipient is of that proclamation come forward if they would like to say a few words at the podium. And if you would go back and take your seat, we'll go on to the next proclamation at the end. We'll have everyone take pictures, and then you are either free to go about your day or you can stay for the rest of our fabulous meeting. It's up to you. So, our first proclamation today is our Veteran of the Month.
Commissioners, I move the following proclamation of the Seminole County Board of County Commissioners recognizing United States Navy Petty Officer Richard Waters for his outstanding service to the United States and Seminole County. Whereas the brave men and women of our Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, Coast Guard, and Space Force demonstrate a resolute spirit and unmatched selflessness, reminding us there are few things more American than giving of ourselves to make a difference in the lives of others. And whereas throughout our country's history, generations of service members have answered the call to leave their families, their jobs, and put their futures and even their lives on the line to valiantly defend our nation. And whereas for many service members, the sacrifice has ended in permanent injury or death, yet their spirit remains in the continued preservation of our freedoms and the promise of liberty. And whereas there are more than 30,000 living veterans in Seminole County who served our nation in times of peace and war, through their service they kept America strong. And whereas Petty Officer Richard Waters enlisted in the Navy in March 1969 and served until January 1973. And whereas Petty Officer Richard Waters served on board the USS Oklahoma City CLG-5 with a combat deployment to the waters off Vietnam. Following that deployment, he served at the Antarctica Support Activity, the site of the South Pole. He earned numerous medals, including the National Defense Service Medal, Vietnam Service Medal, Vietnam Campaign Medal, Republic of Vietnam Armed Forces Meritorious Unit Citation with Gallantry Cross, and the Antarctica Service Medal. And whereas Petty Officer Richard Waters moved to Oviedo in 1997, where he enjoyed a long career in telecommunications, including the establishment of the first call center to the Internet. Since his retirement in 2009, he has been actively involved in the community, volunteering with Birds of Prey, the Special Olympics, and Habitat for Humanity. And whereas Petty Officer Richard Waters has brought great credit and distinction upon himself, the United States of America, the United States Navy, and Seminole County. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that we, the Board of County Commissioners of Seminole County, Florida, express our gratitude, admiration, and respect for Petty Officer Richard Waters for his outstanding service to the United States Navy and residents of Seminole County. Be it further proclaimed that this proclamation is presented to Petty Officer Richard Waters, along with our sincere congratulations and recognition as Seminole County's Veteran of the Month, adopted the 25th day of July, 2023.
Second.
There's a motion by Commissioner Herr, a second by Commissioner Zembauer. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Congratulations.
Petty Officer Waters, if you'd come down to the podium, we would love to hear a few words from you.
I especially want to hear about Antarctica.
Yeah, it was the Great Penguin War of 1972. Thank you all very much for this honor, and I don't want it to sound corny, but I'd like to accept it for everyone in Seminole County, the men and women who have served, and especially for those that have given the ultimate sacrifice. Everybody deserves this, and as a Vietnam vet, most of us didn't get it. So, and with the Antarctic, it was the best place I was ever at.
Quiet, right?
But I spent 3 months in Triple Army Hospital chasing a penguin
Oh, geez.
and blowing my knee out. So here I was back in my hometown like the guy because I was at the South Pole with our town flag, and the next thing they hear is I'm in the hospital because I got beat up by a penguin. But thank you very much. I really
Thank you for your service.
Welcome home, sir.
Wow.
I'm going to move the following resolution of the Seminole County Board of County Commissioners recognizing Mary Myers, manager of the Comptroller's Office, for 30 years of service to Seminole County government and its citizens. Whereas Mary Myers has served Seminole County, its citizens and residents with a high level of integrity, professionalism, and dedication during approximately 30 years of employment in the Seminole County Clerk's Office. And whereas Mary Myers began her career as a deputy clerk in the Civil Domestic Division in the Office of the Clerk of the Circuit Court on January 4th, 1993. She later transferred to the Comptroller's Office, formerly County Finance, on February 14th, 2000. During her tenure in the Comptroller's Office, Mrs. Myers was promoted to manager of the Comptroller's Office, formerly the Finance Manager. And whereas Mary Myers served as manager of the Comptroller's Office to the Board of County Commissioners for the Clerk of the Circuit Court and Comptroller Mary Ann Morse from 1993 to 2016, and Clerk of the Circuit Court and Comptroller Grant Malloy from 2017 to the present. And whereas Mary Myers has received numerous praises over the years from citizens and county employees, she is respected and appreciated by the employees of the Clerk's Office, the Board of County Commissioners, and all constitutional officers. And whereas Mary Myers established and maintained a positive working relationship and a high degree of integrity for the Clerk's Office, the Board of County Commissioners, and all constitutional officers. And whereas the Clerk of the Circuit Court and Comptroller and the Board of County Commissioners are desiring to express their appreciation and acknowledgement on behalf of the citizens of Seminole County and wish to commend Mary Myers for her conscientious and faithful service upon her retirement. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of County Commissioners of Seminole County, Florida, that upon adoption of this resolution, it hereby causes same to be spread upon the official minutes of the Board of County Commissioners in appreciation of service to the citizens and residents of Seminole County by Mary Myers as manager of the Comptroller's Office for Mary's 30 years of service. Be it further resolved that this resolution be presented to Mary along with our most sincere best wishes for her continued good health and happiness in the pursuit of her future endeavors. Adopted this 25th day of July, 2023.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Mary, I am so proud of you. Come on down.
Well, I'm a woman of very few words, so thank you very much.
I had the privilege of working with Mary for many years as a county employee and just so enjoyed her steadfastness and the fact that she could always be counted on. And when there was always a question or a concern and something, you knew Mary was your person. She was steady like a rock. So Mary, you are going to be missed tremendously. I wish you the best. Much love to you and to your family. We're here today with you. So when it's time to do pictures, please feel free to bring your family with you as well. All right. Thank you very much. Our next resolution is recognizing Jeff Hopper for his dedicated service to the county and the citizens of this county.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's my pleasure to enter this resolution of the Seminole County Board of County Commissioners recognizing Jeff Hopper, Principal Planner, Development Services, for 22 years of dedicated and commendable service to Seminole County government and its citizens. Whereas Jeff Hopper on July 31, 2023 will have completed over 22 years of dedicated and commendable service to Seminole County and its citizens. And whereas Jeff Hopper has served Seminole County government since July 1, 2001 in the positions of planner, senior planner, principal planner, and undertaking expanding responsibilities with each promotion. Whereas Jeff Hopper, as principal planner, provided the integral role of supervisor of the long-range planning team and offered his team outstanding leadership and mentorship. And whereas Jeff Hopper has served his leadership roles with professionalism, dedication, and commitment, and whereas Jeff Hopper has contributed to significant regulation change and amendments to the Seminole County Land Development Code, specifically Part 67, landscape, screening, and buffering, as well as updates to the Seminole County Comp Plan. And whereas Jeff Hopper will be missed by his fellow employees for his sharp wit, good sense of humor, and whereas the Board of County Commissioners of Seminole County wishes to express its appreciation to Jeff Hopper on behalf of the staff and citizens of Seminole County for his dedicated service and commitment to Seminole County. Now, therefore, be it resolved that this retirement resolution be presented to Jeff Hopper along with our sincere congratulations and best wishes for future prosperity. Adopted this 25th day of July 2023.
Second.
There's a motion by Commissioner Zembauer, second by Commissioner Delary. I'm going to split this. When you all tie, we're just going to split it down the middle. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Hopper, congratulations.
Thank you. That sounded really good. I hope it's all true. I applied for a job here in 1991 and didn't get hired. I tried again 10 years later, and that time it worked. In between, I had a couple of other positions in other places. I was able to learn a lot of good knowledge and things that I could bring with me, and I was able to, bring some improvements to your codes and your policies along the way. That's been what's most gratifying to me. I would like to thank Rebecca Hammock and Mary Moskowitz for being such phenomenal bosses. I'd like to thank my friends in the planning division for being such good friends and colleagues. I'd like to thank you all for the organization. And that's my speech. Best wishes, everybody.
Congratulations.
Thanks, Jeff.
Congratulations.
And I think we would also want to thank Mr. Hopper for the endless times you spent out in the community at community meetings on behalf of the county. That speaks volumes of your willingness to work with the citizens, so thank you very much.
Our next resolution is recognizing Darrell White for his 35 years of service to Seminole County.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before I get started, it says a lot about this county when you have an individual like Mary, 30 years, Jeff, 22 years, and now Darrell has 35 years. We have so many wonderful county employees, and it's nice to see them go through their whole career here in Seminole County. We have a lot to be thankful for. Not only do we get to know them, not only do they play an important role in shaping this county for the future, their families are also a part of it. So we have a lot to be thankful for such wonderful people that work for the county. With that, Madam Chair, I have a resolution of the Seminole County Board of County Commissioners recognizing Darrell White, Team Leader of Public Works Department, for his 35 years of service to Seminole County government and its citizens. Whereas Darrell White has began his career in Seminole County maintenance worker on October 24th, 1988, in the Roads and Stormwater Division of Public Works, and was promoted to the cement brick worker on August 1st, 1991, and then was promoted to senior team member on January 6, 1998, and then was promoted to team leader on February 1st, 1999. And whereas Darrell White was promoted to various assignments for his public works, and whereas Darrell White has shown exceptional dedication and willingness to accept every role and responsibility given to him, and whereas Darrell White is known for providing exceptional customer service to his fellow employees as well as the citizens of Seminole County, and has been recognized for his dedication and professionalism by his peers. Whereas served Seminole County and its citizens at the highest level of integrity, dedication, and experience for 35 years, Darrell White has chosen to retire effective August 3rd, 2023. And whereas the Board of County Commissioners of Seminole County wishes to express their appreciation for Darrell White on behalf of the staff and citizens of Seminole County for his dedication to the job. Now therefore be resolved that the Board of County Commissioners acknowledge and appreciate the service provided to Seminole County by Darrell White and commend him for his dedication and commitment to the organization. Be it further resolved that this resolution be presented to Darrell White along with our sincere congratulations, recognition, and best wishes for future prosperity, presented on his 25th day, July 2023.
Second.
There's a motion by Commissioner Delary, second by Commissioner Constantine. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Mr. White, come on down.
He's making a statement by wearing shorts. That's right. I love the legs.
It's hot out there. First of all, I'd like to thank God for giving me the strength to do what I did. And also, I want to thank all of you for having our backs, especially Sister, Miss Kerr. She saved me at a midway meeting. And also, I would like to thank the guys in the orange. Every last one of them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Herr would like to be recognized.
Thank you. I just want to point out that 99% of the time, it's Mr. White saving us, so he has done a considerable amount of his time in District 5. We are eternally grateful to you. I have learned a significant amount from listening to you at those meetings, and we will forever be thankful, so we appreciate you.
Amen.
I think what we'll do, Commissioners, is go ahead and go down and take some pictures with these last four agenda items, and then come back and hear from the County Investment Advisor.
Great.
Somebody want your fellow co-workers? Yes. All right. Yes. Mom's rolling. All right, I'll make out 1, 2, 3. Big Mary. Everybody, your wife. And you can take it with you. Go back up and you want Yeah, come on. Here. Daryl's here. Wife, and then we're gonna give one to the.
Love that you were ready.
Ready to go. That's that. Thank you, sir. Come on, guys, come on down.
As Mr. McIntyre makes his way down, I know that some of you are here, or is Mr. McIntyre virtual today?
He's back.
Or is he?
He's back here somewhere. There he is.
Okay. I know some of you are here because you're interested in an item that's going to be a part of the county manager's report this afternoon. We will take public comment on the county manager's report directly after the county manager's report. So if there are other things related to public comment that you would like to make, you can do that during the public comment time in general. So I know there were some questions about that, so I wanted to let you know. Mr. McIntyre, welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. Time is flying these days because it seems like I was just here. But when I was here, the last time I was here, you guys asked me to comment on the policy implications of House Bill 3, not House Bill 3 itself, but just how it's going to affect policy and investments. And it was passed into law and made in its most basic form. It prohibits the consideration of environmental, social, and governance factors in investment and procurement decisions by state and local governments. That's boiled down to about as much as you can boil it down. And the decisions made by Seminole County are transparent. Obviously, that's why we do this in front of the world. And everything that's purchased is within permitted written policy, and there are written policies for investments that are followed. Decisions focus on safety principle and liquidity and diversification and yield and expected future cash flows. The county does not purchase corporate bonds. It does not invest in mutual funds or ETFs. So as a result, ESG factors do not enter the equation. So we did put a very small piece into the policy that basically is intended to recognize House Bill 3. And yeah, I know this is very short. It's intended to be. And what it will say is that the county will not consider environmental, social, and governance factors in the investment decision-making process. About as simple as it can get. So I'm going to step away from that real briefly, and I'm going to make this pretty short, but the Fed meets today and tomorrow. They're going to make another announcement. They probably should not raise rates by another quarter, but they're going to do it anyway. And part of that is because Fed speakers 10 days before the meeting get the opportunity to stand out and speak. Sounds like they're going to move forward. It would be a real big surprise if they didn't. This could very well be the last. And one thing that I want to point out, because I think it's really important, is even though they raise the overnight rate, that doesn't mean that rates out on the curve are going to move up. They could very easily move downward. And the last Bloomberg economist forecast that came out showed that without exception, the nation's economists believe that I'm going to pick on the 2-year Treasury note yield, but it's expected to move downward pretty sharply over the course of the next 6 quarters. And that'll represent two things: the Fed being done, and after they're done hiking rates, at some point they start to cut rates. We don't know when that'll be, but the market always anticipates that before the Fed actually does anything. And then on top of that, inflation is actually behaving, at least on paper it is. So this is very briefly the only graph I'm going to show, and the green line is the year-over-year consumer price index, and it actually got down to 3%. And a year ago, June, it was 9.1%. That was the peak. The only thing I want to caution everybody on is the idea that last June, energy prices were elevated. In July and August of last year, energy prices were flat. So the heavy lifting is done. It wouldn't be a big surprise to me. I don't know if the market will be surprised or not, but it wouldn't be a big surprise if when the next 2 CPI reports came out, the market just sort of upchucked. Instead of seeing things continue to go down, it wouldn't be a surprise to see that headline move higher for a few months. So we're not quite out of the woods yet, but the market, of course, gets in front of these type things. So I know I mention this all the time, but those scratch through lines represent the past meetings and where the yields were. So right now, at this point in time, yields are higher than they were, but if you went back a week, they'd be lower, and if you go back a couple days or a couple days forward, they could be lower still. Very, very volatile market. We've been fortunate in the investments that we've managed to just maybe by dumb luck pick some pretty good spots. On days that we were investing, the market was very cooperative. So I'll show you what that looks like. But before that, there are some upcoming investments maturing, and the maturities that are coming off now are ones that were invested in the zero rate environment. So they're coming off at very low yields, and as much as anything else, that going forward is going to wind up boosting the overall portfolio yield. So you can see I can barely read that, but very, very low yields that are going to be gone and replaced with much higher yields. Some recent investments that were made between the last meeting and now. There's a Palm term investment that was done at 598 that sort of popped up, and we hit that one. Also invested out into August of 2025, so a little longer than 2 years and a couple months. I expected that was going to be closer to 450. It turned out we found a discounted callable that was at 514. So those have both helped quite a bit. Recommended purchases. You've got some spendings that you're doing. So despite the fact that there are quite a few maturities come down the pike, we didn't reinvest all of that, or don't intend to reinvest all of that. I'm not asking that be reinvested in this motion that we'll ask for here in a second, but another $10 million at the Palm term, which is basically it's a pool of investments that's done. PFM and I guess U.S. Bank is responsible for that. We had at one point a pretty significant portion of the portfolio. We let some of those move downward, just kind of to reduce the overall risk when we moved more into treasuries and agencies. And now I feel like we've got some room there, and those yields are pretty attractive. So $10 million there out a year to lock it in, hoping somewhere in the neighborhood of 580, and then another $10 million going out further. I'd like to go out a couple years on that. Looks like we can still get pretty close to 5%. I'm sure we'll be really happy about those longer ones that we're planning on when we get to the spring of next year. So this basically shows, look at the blocks. I know there's a lot here, but look at the right-hand side. The average yield as of the end of June was 423. The average yield at the end of this month, in a couple of days, will be 441. As some of those short maturities occur, we're going to see that continue to move up in the coming months as we roll into the fall. So I've taken up a lot of time at this point. Does somebody want to ask for a motion, or shall I?
Madam Chair.
I think the chairman should do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm always so bad at that.
What I'll do first, though, is ask any of my colleagues if they have any questions. And
No, ma'am.
Are there any questions? No. Commissioner, no? I do want to recognize that we have Mr. Nutton here on the dais with us today on behalf of the clerk, so welcome. We would love to welcome you every week, every time we meet. It's good to have you here. Thank you. All right.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I'll
Commissioner Zembauer.
move to implement the recommendations of our financial advisor based on the report submitted today, and recommend the clerk implement said board recommendations.
Second.
So motion, Commissioner Zembauer, a second from Commissioner Herr. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Safe travels home.
Thank you.
Hot in Texas.
All right. As we move to the consent agenda, I will read the public comment regarding public participation for the consent agenda, but I do want to just point out, we do have items on the consent agenda for which you may fill out a form and speak. So if you are someone who is here who would like to speak on a consent agenda item, please make sure that that form is turned into Ms. Kuntz, sitting at the front looking at forms, okay? Because we will be taking that comment shortly. So pursuant to Florida law, the public has a right to be heard on all propositions except when the Board of County Commissioners is acting on ministerial or emergency matters or conducting a meeting exempt from Section 286.011 Florida statutes. Public comment time on propositions shall be 3 minutes for individuals and 6 minutes for group representatives, assuming that the others who would be a part of that group are waiving their right to speak. The right to be heard during quasi-judicial hearings is governed by Florida law. The public will be provided the opportunity to be heard on non-agenda matters at the end of the meeting. Proper decorum will be observed. In accordance with the operating policies and procedures of the Seminole County Board of County Commissioners, Section 2.175, Public Participation Before the Board, comments shall be limited to the subject being considered by the board. All public comments shall avoid personal attacks, abusive language, and redundancy. Disrespectful, rude, irrelevant, or slanderous remarks or disruptive behavior may subject the individual to removal from the board chambers. The chairman may curtail repetitious comments. And again, if you are here to speak on a non-agenda item that is a part of the county manager's report, we will do that before the public participation at the very end of the meeting. So we're pivoting here a little bit. The consent agenda that's before us today is number 6 through 19. Is there a motion, or does anyone have an item they'd like to pull? Does anyone have an
I
item?
want to ask the county managers, any changes?
No changes to the my consent agenda.
Okay.
Move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
There's a motion by Commissioner Constantine, a second by Commissioner Zembauer. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Madam Chair, there was no public comment?
No, I'm so sorry. No. I didn't call for it because she didn't say there was any, and so my apologies. Is there anyone here who neglected to fill out a form who wanted to speak on any of the items on the consent agenda? Ms. Kuntz and I were doing mental telepathy. All right, thank you. Our regular agenda item is item number 20. Mr.
Madam Chair, move approval of constitutional officers' consent agenda.
And that's items 18 and 19, is that, no, item 19.
19.
Item 19 is the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Charity. Okay, so my apologies. Regular agenda item, Mr. Dex.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm Timothy Jex with the Office of Management and Budget. In compliance with truth and millage requirements, the purpose of item number 20 is to establish the fiscal year 24 proposed millage rates and set the date, time, and location of the first public hearing to adopt the FY24 budget. County staff held 4 work sessions with the board and recently delivered the county manager's proposed budget on July 14th, which assumes the same millage rates as the prior year for all 3 taxing districts. The proposed rates shown here are 4.8751 mils for the general fund, 2.7649 mils for the fire district, and 0.1107 mils for the roads district. The aggregate rate of 6.8861 mils is 9% above the aggregate rollback rate of 6.3178 mils, which would generate the same revenue as the prior year, excluding new construction. This slide shows our millage history. Rates have remained unchanged for the last 7 years, and the general fund millage in green has been unchanged since 2011 and remains lower than the rates approved in 1990. In addition, we request the board set the first public hearing for Tuesday, September 12th at 5:30 p.m. here in the BCC chambers. The second public hearing will be scheduled for Tuesday, September 26th at 5:30 p.m. That concludes my presentation, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Any questions for Mr. Jex? Is there a motion? Oh, I'm sorry. Is there anyone who would like to speak on the trim? Oh, Mr. Horvath. Welcome. This is our annual visit from you.
Well, the last few months I've been having some medical issues, but I'm through with them now.
All right. Well, before you start on that, could you give us your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
John Horvath, 1004 Bradford Drive, Winter Park, Florida. And I always like to say that's the Seminole County part with the Winter Park mail-in address. So as somebody who's followed this budget for 40 or 50 years, every year it gets bigger. We have more people to serve in the county. I saw some of the figures of 480-something thousand people, and I was here when this county had a total population of 25,000, so we can imagine what things are like from years ago to today. And in discussions, I had a discussion with Commissioner Delary at a meeting about fire trucks, and they've gone up in price, and it takes time to get them, and I don't think this county has any budget item that it costs less today than it did a few years ago. And this county has always run tight budgets ever since I've been following, before many of you were sitting on the board. And I've always liked what they've done, and we saw the public works people, how they stay with the county in years of service. And we have to keep up with the growth in this area. Even if we don't grow, you still have to provide for the infrastructure. Many of you heard from me in years past, because in my subdivision, I was here for a hearing a few months ago where a lift station was 50 years old, which is the same time I've lived in a subdivision, and they have to update it because they can't get parts, they have to get a new one. So that's not just with lift stations, but with your parks and recreation, water and sewer, et cetera. So there's always a cost, and I know nothing's less today than it was years ago, and the budget's always been tight, and there's some stuff on that board that's been there. I'll give you an example, Station 39, I saw that on the fire department's website, their annual report in 2010. So that's 13 years it's been on the proposal, and why hasn't it been built? Because it's not serving the people up in that area. I know you're working on it, but I'm just saying, some of these things have been on the books for years, and we need to keep moving on and keep up with everything, because if you don't, it's going to cost us more in the long run than it is taken care of on a regular basis. And we need to maintain the millage. The rollback, I never liked that when they did it, because I never asked, I've had business people say they should roll back the rates, and I says, well, can you roll back your rates for your auto repair service or whatever? And they say no, because I'm paying more for the parts than I did a few years ago. So the government is just like any business, and I know those trucks you buy, the fire trucks, I think what they're $1 million now for a pumper, and I remember back in the 70s when they were $50,000. So let's think about it. And I remember Jerry McCollum, who used to be a county engineer here. I used to love him when we go to hearings on road construction, and he used to say when he first started, he used to quote what a 1 mile of road used to cost back when he started, and when he was leaving, something 25 or 30 years later, it was 4 or 5 times the amount, just because of cost of materials and stuff that had to be done on the roads. So maintain the millage and maintain the infrastructure. And I know many of you heard that from me over the years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Horvath. Appreciate you being here. So, now, all right.
That's good.
Commissioner Zembauer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that we maintain the total rate mill of 7.7507 for a first public hearing on 9/12/2023 at 5:30, the second public hearing at 9/26/23 at 5:30 p.m.
Madam Chair, I will second that with the idea that everybody should know that this keeps us at the lowest aggregate tax rate in the region.
So there's a motion by Commissioner Zembauer, a second by Commissioner Constantine. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Gray, you have several things to report on. I'd like to ask that we take care of the parking signs first, if we could.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and Commissioners. I actually have just 3 items for you to discuss with you under my report today. This is actually supposed to be a short meeting just to approve the millage rate, so I'm glad everyone is here. The first one is the no parking signs on Brentwood Avenue. I know, Madam Chairman, you have brought this up at least once or twice at the board meeting. So last year, we actually installed no parking signs at the request of the Sheriff's Office on Brentwood Avenue. Then it was about it's in May, about a month and a half ago, there was really a complaint on the legality of that. We had to remove those. We got with our county attorney's office and researched that, and basically what it comes down to is that the Board of County Commissioners needs to approve this. We are working in the meantime on the code change, so when it comes to public safety, especially if when the sheriff is requesting it, that we can handle it through our own code. If it needs to come to the board, of course, as you know, I'll bring it to the board. And so what I'm asking the board to do, and I'll defer to you, Madam Chairman, is to a request to approve those signs to be installed on both sides of the road on Brentwood Avenue.
Any questions for the county manager on this item?
Thank you.
I would entertain a motion to put the signs up while we work on a permanent solution.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Herr, second by Commissioner Zembauer. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Appreciate that very much.
Thank you. Thanks for putting the map up. Forgot about that. The second item, and actually I would have actually put this on the next agenda, but this candidate that has accepted a position is actually starting before the next meeting, so I wanted to bring it up under my report. But I am actually pleased to announce that we have selected a new communications director. As you know, that was one, and when I came on board a couple of months ago, one of the positions that I had requested the board and that you all had authorized me to recruit and to bring on board. I think it's very, very important that we have a communications department and put it at a level of a director. And so I'm pleased to announce that Christopher Patton has been selected as the communications director. He goes by Chris, by the way. I'm going to forward to each of your offices his resume so you can actually look at that, as well as I will be setting up individual meetings with each of you so you get to know him, so he can start a relationship with your offices as well. Chris has over 20 years of experience in the communications. Just recently, this last 9 years, has been vice president of a communications firm here locally. So we're very, very pleased that he accepted. He accepted last week, and so his first day will be Monday, August the 7th. Per our charter, you all have to actually approve or confirm the directors that I appoint or hire. So I'm just asking if you would move to approve Chris.
Madam Chair, move approval.
Second.
Motion from Commissioner Zembauer, second by Commissioner Delary. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
And then the last issue is that I would like to update the board on the 1,4-dioxin issue that we all have been hearing about over the last couple months. I'm going to ask our Environmental Services Director, Kim Ornberg, to come up and give us a brief presentation, but as she's coming up, you can go to the next slide, if you will. I'll help her on this one. What I've asked Ms. Ornberg, as we have been researching this over the last couple of months, is actually to go over a few things with the board. As you know, this is the first opportunity that we could bring this to the board for you to look at it in a public setting. But what I've asked Ms. Ornberg to go over is what is dioxin, what is the 1,4-dioxin, to go over the background and the history of this, as well as, once we were aware of it, the current actions that we have taken so far, and then we'll be also discussing with you our next steps, what we've already done. And we also want to wrap the presentation up with contact information, so if there's anyone in the public who needs more information, that there is going to be contact information both on our website and from our staff and from other regulatory agencies that they can get more information from. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Ornberg, and then I'll wrap it up at the end.
All right. Thank you, and good afternoon. Again, for the record, I'm Kim Ornberg, the Director of Environmental Services for Seminole County, which includes water, sewer, and solid waste. And so let's get started. Okay, let's start with the basics. What is 1,4-dioxin? 1,4-dioxin is a synthetic industrial chemical used in solvents and cleansers and cleaners. It's used in the manufacture of dyes, adhesives, deodorants, lubricants, detergents, and is commonly found in many household items. It's also considered a contaminant of concern and is currently unregulated by the U.S. EPA, or the Environmental Protection Agency, and the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, or FDEP. The Florida Department of Health, or FDOH, has adopted a health advisory for 1,4-dioxin of 0.35 parts per billion, which I believe is the second to the lowest in the country. It's been documented that it's been used in the manufacturing processes at the former Siemens site in Lake Mary, and has also been documented that it was mishandled and caused impacts to employees, to the ground, and groundwater. It has also been the subject of a multiple-part series featured in the Orlando Sentinel. Background. So let's start with the background of our county wells. 1,4-dioxin was first identified in the 3 county water treatment wells during the water treatment plants during the 2013 EPA mandated sampling, along with other unregulated chemicals. And as for background, the county at that time had already planned to decommission 2 of those water treatment plants, the Heathrow and the Monroe plants, and then to redevelop the third into a regional facility, which is now the Markham Regional Water Treatment Plant. The results of the 2013 and 2014 sampling were published in the 2015 Annual Water Quality Report as regulated and required by the state and federal agencies. It was at this time, once these wells were identified, our staff at the time made operational changes to our impacted wells that minimized the concentrations in our drinking water to keep the average, whose average has been half the health advisory level since the original sampling. Our water has consistently been below the 0.35 parts per billion. And now the next slide shows our actual data. So this data are the results from the initial samples done under the 2013-2014 EPA requirements. They are from the Heathrow, Markham, and Monroe water treatment plants. And I know it's not as easy to see up here, but you can see the orange cell for the Heathrow plant had the highest level of dioxin at 0.058, which is above the current state health advisory levels. These samples were taken at each of the treatment plants at the point of entry, and the point of entry is where the water leaves the treatment plants and enters the distribution system and pumped out to the community. This next set of samples, this slide shows all the subsequent samples that have been collected from the 3 Heathrow wells and the Markham Regional Water Treatment Plant at the point of entry. These are all of the dioxin data that has been collected since 2013 through May of this year. Most of the data was collected by Brown and Caldwell as part of the Siemens investigation and remediation. But as you can see, there's only one peach or orange-colored cell that's highlighted, which was in 2016, and this was the only time since 2013 that we actually had a sample that was at, but not exceeding, the health advisory level. Ever since then, we have been well below the health advisory level on all sampling due to the operational changes that were made. Again, the average concentration leaving the Markham Regional Water Treatment Plant is about half of the health advisory level. And you can see the cells that are highlighted in green are all the times that the samples showed that they were below the analytical laboratory detection limit. So current actions, what are we doing about this? Since recently becoming the Director of Environmental Services and recently being made aware of this, we have been working to develop with our staff and leadership to develop a comprehensive, multi-pronged approach to assessing the situation and sharing this and other information with the public. We began monitoring. We've expanded our sampling, our internal staff sampling for the 1,4-dioxin. We've increased the locations and frequency to monthly to better understand its impact throughout our systems. We've been coordinating with DEP to allow for their sampling of our Heathrow wells and the Markham Regional Water Treatment Plant. We also have begun proactively sampling for PFAS, and I don't know if you all have heard about PFAS in the news or online, but it's known as a forever chemical. And EPA has not required sampling of these yet. It is yet unregulated, but we've initiated this sampling to try and see if we have a problem and to see what we need to do about that as well. We'll be sampling our water treatment plants, our wells, our reclaimed water, and our landfill leachate. So after that, we've begun coordination and communications with the cities and Department of Health and DEP. We've been talking to Lake Mary, Sanford, DOH, DEP about sampling strategies, offering assistance where we can, and ensuring we are directing residents to the proper staff within each entity. The other thing that we've done is engaged a consultant for assistance. Finally, we've contracted with one of our consultants, Carollo, and we have some of their staff here today, Mary Thomas and Scott Richardson, to help us assist in the assessment of both the 1,4-dioxin and the PFAS in our service area, in this service area, as well as throughout our county water systems. I'm not aware that the county had previously brought a consultant on to help with guidance on this. So I've outlined the highlighted high-level tasks and the timelines for this. So last Friday we had our kickoff meeting with Carollo. Task 1, we're reviewing all the data. They're reviewing all the data and available information. It should take a couple of weeks. Task 2, a data assessment and summary report we should be getting in late August. Task 3 is identifying any treatment options, estimated cost, and potential funding opportunities. And we should be receiving that in late October, early November. And once we review that, we'll be bringing that back to the board with recommendations and information in November. We've also added dioxin-specific information to our website that includes frequently asked questions, our annual water quality reports, regulatory information from EPA, DEP, and DOH, as well as contact information. I think as of the 21st, this is an ongoing tally, but we had 842 total site visits. We have had 42 emails and 53 phone calls that we have been responding to. And just for a summary of information, our most frequently asked questions have been, is my water safe? Am I in the impacted area? And how can I get my private well tested? As we've communicated to the residents and concerned citizens that have reached out to us, I want to assure everyone that our very dedicated staff is following all protocols and requirements of the Safe Drinking Water Act and state regulations to ensure that your water, our water, is as safe and reliable as possible. Drinking water is highly regulated and requires daily, weekly, and monthly testing, licensed operators, and highly specialized and technical equipment. Utilities in the county, like ourselves and our neighbors, our neighbor utilities, rely on the state and the federal government regulatory agencies to conduct the research and set appropriate and safety levels for which we follow and meet. The second question on do I live in the area affected? This map shows the northwestern service area, which is where the Heathrow plant and the well, the Markham plant and the Heathrow wells are at. And finally, the residents on private wells have been directed to the Department of Health, since they are the ones that regulate and oversee this information, or the private wells. Okay, next steps. As many of you know, I am a strong proponent for education and public outreach. I believe that we have an opportunity here to think and act differently than maybe we have in the utility side in the past, and make all of our water data available to the public all of the time through an educational website similar to or as an extension of our very successful Seminole Water Atlas, which houses all of our data on our natural water systems. This will present the data in an easy-to-understand dashboard type of format with educational information to support it. We could potentially call it the Seminole One Water Atlas, but I don't know if that's something that's trademarked or not, but look into that. But while this will take some time for us to do, in the short term, we will post this data that we've provided today, this PowerPoint presentation, to our website, and we will continue to update it with information as we gather that. We're going to establish regular meetings with other utilities in the county. We've already started reaching out to them and been in contact with several of the cities and other county utilities. This will help us to coordinate and share information more efficiently and to help us foster our regional solutions. And this ties in with the holistic water policy that we'll be bringing forward to you in the near future. We will continue to coordinate our 1,4-dioxin and PFAS activities with DEP and DOH, including the findings from our consultant. We'll seek outside funding opportunities for anything that we end up deciding to do as far as federal or state opportunities. And finally, we will present these findings and recommendations and options to the board in a future session and to the public. So here's the contact information for the state agencies, the Department of Environmental Protection, Central District, who is in charge or regulates the contamination, drinking water, and the Department of Health that does the well testing and oversees private wells. Again, this information will be posted to our website, so you all will be able to get it. This is contact information for the City of Lake Mary and for the City of Sanford. And finally, here is my information and the county contact information. And I thank you all for allowing me to present this important information to you. And at this point, I am finished, and I will be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, and if I could just wrap up, just to reemphasize, when we were made aware of this, I want to commend Ms. Ornberg and her staff for responding immediately to it, expanding our testing, and just not at the wells, but actually as it goes, as you all know, as it goes through our plant, and then it goes to the point of distribution. We actually started testing at that point of distribution when it goes into the pipes and out into the community. So we will definitely continue to be doing that as well, as Ms. Ornberg said, on a monthly basis, so you're aware of everything. Also, we immediately contacted the Florida Department of Environmental Protection as well, so we could stay in coordination with them as they do regulate this, and they're a regulatory agency, so we're always in contact with them. But as we were made aware of this more and more, so we definitely reached out and have a dialogue and a relationship with them regarding that. As Ms. Ornberg said, we want to do a multi-pronged approach to this, and so as coming on board here in the last couple of months, I was like, we need to get the experts, not anything against our staff, but have an expert, a third party that understands, that knows this, has the license in it to come in and to evaluate and reevaluate and assess our operations. So we immediately got a scope of work from Corollo, and they're in contract with us as well. Also, we've actually had another third party to come in and to do an assessment of all of our testing and on our quarterly basis, and to look at that to ensure that we're in compliance with all state and federal regulations as well. And so we have, again, we did the multi-pronged approach to this to ensure that, and double sure and triple sure that we're doing everything that we possibly can to ensure the residents, business owners of our great county, that we are in compliance with all regulations.
Commissioners, I'm sure you have questions. If you're okay, what I'd like to do is just start with Commissioner Herr, and then we can work our way down the dais, if that's all right.
Sure.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to pull us back to slide 5 and 6, and for clarification purposes, explain the difference between the two graphs.
So this first one is the first samples that were taken under the EPA required monitoring in 2013. So we had to take 2 samples. The staff was required to take 2 samples at a certain time span apart. So this in August of 2013 and then February of 2014. So these were samples that were taken at the Heathrow water treatment plant at the point of entry. Also at the Monroe water treatment plant at that point of entry, and then the Markham water treatment plant at that point of entry. So those were 3 water treatment plants that we had in service at that time. Subsequent to that, the Monroe and and the Heathrow plants were taken offline, but the Heathrow wells were still in service.
Okay, so now take me to 6.
Okay. And these are all of the sample dates for the 3 Heathrow wells that we have in service. That's Heathrow 2, Heathrow 5, and Heathrow 6, and the Markham Regional Water Treatment Plant at the point of entry. So that's where all of these samples occur.
And so I just want to point out that those wells that have been much talked about, there hasn't been a reading above, exceeding, let me say this correctly, exceeding the limit in this time frame at all. There's been one that met the limit for reporting purposes in all of these samplings of the wells.
That is correct.
And so over the time frame from 8/13 through 5/31 of '23, and you know what, I'll go to 4/13 of '23 since there's NS's there. So roughly a 10-year span, we've had one time where we met the reporting limit and we reported it.
The ones that were reported were the 2013, 2014.
So we didn't report when we met the limit because you have
Correct.
to report when you exceed the limit.
These were, yes, they were, yes.
Okay. I just want to go back and point out, from my perspective, first of all, let me just say that this is simply one of the most important things we do, is to provide safety for the citizens of the county. Drinking water is certainly a significant component of that. I know that that will get lost in the quotes that are about to get made, but the reality of this is that it was 10 years ago that this cropped up, and the article, while I think was exceptionally well-written, and the purpose of the freedom of the press is to hold us accountable, and it's doing that because we are now going to report out more regularly. I've been asking for dashboards since I got on this board. Now we have a willing participant in that mission. But we have, I think, to some degree, really scared people beyond what we need to be frightened. I have seen in my neighborhood, this is District 5, more Culligan water trucks ever. I've seen more in the last multiple weeks than I have in the last 20 years that I've lived there. And quite frankly, I worry that we may be causing people to be concerned beyond the necessary concern. I am not saying that we shouldn't be concerned. If there's something in the water, we should be concerned and doing everything possible. But it's often buried at the back end of a very long article that this was 10 years ago. So I just want to make it very clear that this was 10 years ago, certainly before me, certainly before you, certainly before you, that this went on. I can assure you that I am taking this seriously as the district commissioner. The majority of this is in my district. We are heavily engaged in making sure that not only are we monitoring, but that we will be reporting out publicly in a meaningful way, not only on this, but on other issues with regard to the water, as Ms. Ornberg indicated. But I do want to just point out one more time, was in 2016 was the last time we saw a number that was at the level, not above the level of a reporting requirement. That's it.
All right, Commissioner Delary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kim, can you talk to us a little about one of the wells that we were actually shut down several years ago? That was well 6, correct?
That is correct.
That's Heathrow 6, correct?
That is correct.
And that's the one that's on the chart.
Correct.
When did we shut that down?
I believe it was around 2015.
Okay.
We still use it for compliance monitoring, and we, regularly, as needed we operate as needed for compliance, which is sampling, basically.
All right. Can you also show us, I'm hoping that you can show us the actual plume, actually the map of, we have that here today or not?
I do not have that. I can bring it forward to it.
I'd like to see that, because I know the public would like to see it as well. And then can you also talk to us about what's happening with the two cities as well?
I've been in contact with the two cities, and I know Lake Mary has constructed and is operating a high-level plant, water treatment plant. They were affected the most, from what I understand, from their wells. Funding for their water treatment plant was provided by, I believe, the Siemens Corporation, but I don't think they took any, from what I've seen, any responsibility, or I don't know. Anyway,
You don't know that?
I don't know that. I don't. Lake Mary has had some issues with one of their wells that they are looking to add some processes to, and I think that they've reached out for funding, external funding.
So can you also tell us, even though we shut down the well 6, how that affected the system?
We were able to change our operating schedule, and we're able to provide the necessary water at a better quality, because that well happened to be closest to the Siemens site.
Yeah. All right, I'd still like to get some more information about that, please.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Commissioner Zembauer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I concur completely with statements that have already been made by Commissioner Herr. It's very clear to me that the media just didn't publish the reality of the information that's here. They published whatever they had, whatever they felt they wanted to publish, and I think this shows a better picture of the reality of the matter. And I think it has incited some people to be scared and concerned, and as we all are. I don't know of a single commissioner up here that is not concerned that the welfare of our citizens is looked after from any services that we provide. But I'm going to go a little bit of a different direction, and I hear these processes and these consultants that we're bringing in, and we're going to be looking at this PFAS now. There's recently been a huge PFAS settlement. I reached out to our attorney's office to find out, were we following that and doing anything with that, and I'm still waiting for an answer back on that, so I'd appreciate an answer on that. But the ratepayers are who are impacted by the additional costs, our utilities and the way our bonding does. All these processes cost money, which goes directly to the water bill for these ratepayers. That said, if we believe, I have my own beliefs, this is not a new novel idea. This has been going on since the late 60s. There's been multiple lawsuits in that region related to TCE and Dioxin, 1,4-dioxane. My question is, those costs, what are we going to do to offset those costs of this additional consultants, testing, whatever we're going to do, that's going to be borne by the ratepayers who we're concerned about because of someone else's negligence? And I think we need to be looking at that very closely as how we recover those costs and not burden the ratepayers. All of us want good water. All of us want good air to breathe. But if there is an entity that's responsible, or multiple entities responsible, I think our legal staff should be taking a long, hard look at that as far as what our rights are to recover on behalf of our ratepayers. Because if we don't, then all the citizens, including those that are not utility customers, are going to end up paying for the costs as a result of somebody else's negligence. And so I think we need to take a real deep dive at that and understand. I think St. Lucie County recently just had a huge settlement related to these type of issues and groundwater contamination. In fact, the Orlando Sentinel, I've been around a few minutes, had their own contamination issue back in the mid-'90s. My family owned property in the downtown Orlando area, and walk-up exterminating, and the Sentinel were going back and forth about who was at fault, et cetera, et cetera. Ultimately, there were settlements in that process. The reality is, it's going to take money to do these oversights, these investigations, additional testing, algorithms, and so forth. So I think we need to be taking a look at how we recover that on behalf of our citizens. That's it.
Okay. Commissioner Constantine?
I, too, want to commend the newsprint. It's important, and I think this shows, it always shows, that it's important that you have a strong, viable fourth estate when dealing with any issues. And those, when you lose that, you lose the opportunity for this, for true knowledge, hopefully knowledge that people can use. And so I think that, for one, I'm very thankful that Kevin Spear and others did this, because this does bring out action, action that needs to be taken. It is important, and my fellow commissioners mentioned that this was unregulated when it was first detected, and the DEP and Department of Health all knew, but they never said anything about it because, as they said, there was no process and it was unregulated. So, let's look at what we can learn from this, and let's do, in my opinion, do better. And one thing that I think that has not been mentioned is the fact that somebody knew, but three county managers, the last three county managers, all have told me personally and others that they knew nothing about it. We have to have a culture where all is transparent and people will tell other folks. And Kim, on her own half, did not know about this until Kevin Spear mentioned it to her. I know the county manager knows this, that has to change, and I know he's taking steps to do it. So I'm not going to go into details or anything like that. I'm just thankful that he's doing this, because this can't happen again. We need to work with the cities. We have to ensure that they, as well as us, are doing everything we can to make our water as clean as possible. And we all know this. I'm not saying anything that any others have not said before. But those cities are also citizens of Seminole County. And even if their water is coming someplace else, and the vast majority of where this toxin was from was not from Seminole County, but was in the cities, but still, they are Seminole County citizens, and all must be protected. Excuse me. And last, to kind of dovetail off of what Commissioner Zimbauer has said, we have to potentially look at those that cause this problem. We have to aggressively look at those companies, entities, whichever they are. We have to, in my opinion, we have to research what it is, and we have to go after them aggressively, and we have to get financial consideration.
Remuneration.
I was trying to say that, but
I said it for you.
Thank you. I think you all know I had the red eye this morning getting back here from Austin. But the fact of the matter is that needs to happen. So there's two sides. We need to ensure clean water for our citizens. We need to swiftly and aggressively take action, which we're doing, on testing. And at the same time, we need to ensure that staff-wise, this doesn't happen, and knowledge is forthcoming all the way to the top, so that our top can make decisions, our CEO and our board of directors. And then we need to take action and see just who caused this and how we are going to get financially reimbursed.
So, Commissioner Herr.
I just want to set the record straight on a couple things. It is very clear to me that people did know about it, and it was reported. It was reported in the 2015 Annual Water Quality Report, and I suspect that the commissioners received that in 2015. I would also tell you that I think while we're talking about remuneration, I think it all needs to be with a forward look. I really would like to stop looking out the rearview mirror and start looking out the windshield. And that has to be with where, if there are opportunities for us to seek funding for an infrastructure change that changes the output of our systems, then that's worth pursuing. If this is about pursuing damages for punitive purposes that may not be significant, I would like not to spend time on that. This isn't about money. This is about securing the water system in the county for the benefit of the citizens of our county and our good health. So from my perspective, it's about time being spent on making sure that our infrastructure accommodates whatever it is that the pollutants are of today, the past, and what comes in the future, because we can't even see what's happening right now. The last piece of this that I would point out is that, and I know I'm beating a drum here, and that's typically not my MO, but we sat in our strategic planning meeting, I think it was November or December of 2020. It was not long after I got onto this board and had my eyes glazed over by how government operates, to be quite honest. And I talked about dashboards. And the uptake on that was one other commissioner. I'll point to my right. The uptake on that was very little from county management, and that was supported by the 5 of us on the dais. It starts here with the expectation of full disclosure, not with our team. Our team follows our lead. So our lead has to be that we are going to be transparent and we're going to be forward-thinking and not blame-seeking.
I would add to that, the dashboards were about all sorts of cool things, not
really
just
were.
water.
But the Sentinel hasn't figured those out yet.
No, not yet. I have some questions for Ms. Ornberg, but also probably I'd like to ask some of our team members from Carollo if you wouldn't mind just coming down, because I think there's a micro and a macro. And in order to really understand the micro, I think we need to have a foundational level at the macro. And all of us have been consuming lots of information about this particular contaminant, but there are lots of contaminants, right? So I would love to just ask a bunch of different questions to help fill out a framework for discussion and for additional questions. And this is in the context, for my Carollo folks, best practices, industry standards. I'm not asking you to come up here and give a specific rundown of our specific operation, because our county manager and his team are going to have to dig into that. That's not, yes, it is here, but we are not supposed to be in these weeds. That's not our job. So how many potential contaminants are there in water? We're talking about 1,4-dioxane, that's one contaminant.
Wow, that's a really good question, and I don't think any one of us can answer that. There are countless contaminants that we know of today, and many, many more that we have no idea of, and many that have not been created. The UCMR data that Ms. Ornberg referred to earlier, that data is collected every 5 years. These are unregulated contaminants. They're described that way. That's what UCMR means. It's unregulated contaminants. Those are sampled for once every 5 years in an effort for the EPA to identify what is up and coming and what requires regulation. So to answer your specific question, impossible to answer.
Would hundreds be an overestimation?
No, not at all.
Okay. And there are different types of contaminants. Is that correct? There are some naturally occurring contaminants and there are some synthetic type contaminants, right? I mean,
1,4-dioxane is a synthetic solvent. Seminole County and utilities in the area treat for things like iron and sulfide. That is a naturally occurring element. So there are naturally occurring and synthetic, absolutely.
Okay. And I neglected to ask you to state your name and your title for the record.
Yes,
My
thank you.
apologies.
So I'm Mary Thomas. I'm with Carollo Engineers. I'm a resident of Seminole County. I drink your water each and every day, as do my 2 daughters. So I care about this just as much as anyone does in this room. I'm the project manager for this particular task, and Scott Richards here is also with me with Carollo Engineers.
Okay. And so as we talk about all of these innumerable contaminants, what is the industry standard for testing for them? How do you choose what's tested for and how frequently? Who makes that decision?
As Ms. Ornberg pointed out, it is generally the EPA or the Department of Health or the Department of Environmental Protection who outline the criteria for sampling for public water supplies. And in general, public water suppliers such as yourselves have far more rigorous requirements than say the bottled water industry does. So you have very, very rigorous standards.
So would it be safe to say that if we were to test some popular commercial bottled water, that they may have more contaminants in their bottled water than we have in our water coming out of our tap?
It's hard to say. I'm not an expert in bottled water, but it's absolutely a possibility.
Okay.
We haven't done that sort of work.
Well, we might ask you to do that. That might just be fun for kicks.
Maybe perhaps you could sample your diet sodas. Maybe that would be one way to.
I'm getting to the diets next because I've got it.
I'm a diet soda.
Let's not get carried away.
I'm coming for you. I'm worried about how much diet drink this man drinks. So when we talk about the UCMR process, how frequently does the EPA or whoever it is that establishes that, how frequently do they establish it, and do they choose what's next? And do we know what they're going to be testing for next?
Than I do.
Good afternoon, Scott Richards. Good to see everybody. The process historically has been about every 5 years. So starting next year, we're actually on UCMR 5, which will be the 5th round of that. So EPA will establish, this is nationally, not just locally, based on those potential contaminants, typically those new up and coming, like we've heard a lot about PFAS. That'll be one of the big things that's coming soon.
Are the Sentinel reporters taking this down? Because that'll be your story in 2 years.
Which will affect every utility in the country, right? So this is a new thing that we're looking at. So it continues to evolve in our industry. Unfortunately, I won't say joke about it because it's a serious matter, but wonder what is industry creating next that we're going to have to deal with in our industry, right? And the unfortunate part of it is a lot of it has actually already been through our body into the wastewater system before it even gets to the water, right? So I think we have to keep that in mind and kind of ground ourselves from what some of these challenges are and where they're originating. And we think, hey, it's getting into it from purely the water. Well, that's not even close. Most of the things we've been consuming and eating and other things we work with. I know Commissioner Zenbauer, you and I share a car interest, and I'm pretty sure I've sprayed more Dioxin with brake cleans on my brakes in my career than I will ever get near within water.
Non-chlorinated you have to use.
No, the chlorinated works better, though. That's the problem.
That's
right?
true.
So, but that's where, in all seriousness, we have to be conscious and aware of this, that it's not just water, right? This is a much broader picture issue that the whole world is going to be facing as we move forward.
Okay. I love that because one of my questions was, it sounds to me through this learning journey that I've been on, like that it might be easier to keep the contaminants out of the water to begin with than it is to remove them. So that's a fabulous message.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely wish we could stop it at the source, but unfortunately, most of those sources have already gotten to places where it's now getting in our groundwater, and I think we can all relate to growing up, as a child, we drank it right out of the tap, right out of the ground in a well. No problems, right? But now those times are unfortunately changing, and that process continues to get more and more advanced as more sites like the one we're speaking of here have contaminated the ground, and now it's moving through the system.
Okay. For these, we keep using the parts per billion or parts per whatever. Can you, in layman's terms, explain to us what this advisory level would be over the course of, how many gallons over how many years are we concerned that there is a potential impact?
If you review the DEP report, their guidance for a health advisory means if you drink above the health advisory limit for 70 years or more, your likelihood of getting cancer is increased by 1 in a million. So that's how this is defined. So if one of us were to drink more, the water that was sampled in 2016 for 70 years, if I drink that water with the peach box for 70 years consistently, I would have a 1 in a million chance more than any other individual at getting cancer. That's how the DEP defines a health advisory limit.
That's a great detail to know and understand. I will share from a personal note and along the lines of Commissioner Herr. Anytime we're talking about people's health and wellness, it is an incredibly personal and very serious situation. And I have had a couple of close friends reach out that are very concerned because they had family members that have been diagnosed with cancer over the course of the last few years and are battling cancer currently. And I'm going to speak from a personal perspective because I don't want to put this on anyone else, but when you or a family member are diagnosed with cancer, it is such an incredibly horrifying thing that all you want to do, one of the things you want to do is find an answer. You want to be able to know, how did this happen? Why did this happen? And who can I blame? Because you're angry at some point in time. And I'm not saying that those feelings are inappropriate in any way, shape, or form. But I think where we have to be very careful as leaders in this community is that we do not do anything to add to the existing fears and trauma that cancer already inflicts on our community. And I'm very concerned that some of the reporting that has been done, albeit very well written in some ways, the headlines that have been chosen are, in my estimation, irresponsible, and they have caused a great amount of concern and fear that when you look at the actual data, I don't think that the headlines, that the data does not support the headlines. So I'm going to put that out there as a personal note. Back on a data note, if we were, for some reason, to give, after learning a lot more, because we have a lot more to learn about what our options are, and our team has a lot more work to do, if we were to put into place a system like Lake Mary has, could we assure that there would be 0.0000014 in our water?
No. The process that Lake Mary uses is an ozone advanced oxidation process. Those types of processes are designed to reduce contaminants by some level, and that's exactly how it works in practice. That is the treatment that's being used on site, at the Siemens site. It's a treatment process that's used nationwide for 1,4-dioxane. Seminole County is not the only county to deal with this contaminant. So the answer is no, there's no guarantee that this treatment will completely eliminate it. There's a very high likelihood that a treatment could reduce concentrations.
And when you're looking at the most recent of I think that's 1.3, it's hard.
The average,
the bottom right at the Markham plant. How much lower from 0.13 could we get with that system, do you think?
I think it's typical to look at perhaps half, cutting it in half.
Okay.
I'll note one of the challenges is, and we've been calling numerous labs in the past few days on this subject, there's only a handful of labs in the country that can even measure this to the EPA standard. On top of that, those labs can only measure so low. In fact, most of your numbers are about at that threshold where you can't even measure lower than that amount. So we typically use the word trace, right? You're getting a trace of it, but these numbers are so low that the current technology really limits that ability to keep measuring lower and lower. So to say zero kind of means you couldn't measure it, right? But that's, again, relying on other lab technologies, so there's a lot of challenges from that perspective.
Okay. And as we look at the limit that Florida set for our own self-regulation, because the federal government is not regulating it in our drinking water, I heard Ms. Ornberg say that we are perhaps the second lowest state in the country. Can you give me a feel for what some of the, and I'm not asking you to name states, we're not trying to, put anybody down or start a problem in another state, but give me an idea of what are some highs, some lows, where are we in terms of like.
I remember that Canada was at 50 parts per billion.
So we are 0.35.
0.35.
And
Canada's 50. And I think there was the World Health Organization might have been the same. I think there was one, though, with the one below us, I want to say was like 0.3, I think, but I don't have that information in front of me.
So wide gambit. Wide. Okay.
May I add one thing I forgot to say when Commissioner Delary was asking about Lake Mary and Sanford? One of the things I don't know if I clarified, but their wells, the wells in Lake Mary and the well in Sanford, at Mayfair, I think it is, but those wells, the data is significantly, Lake Mary's was significantly higher than the health advisory. And the Sanford ones were above the health advisory as well, where ours have always been at or below, with the exception of that very first one. Just wanted to clarify that.
All right. I've monopolized it a lot of time. Any other questions, Commissioner Zembauer and then Commissioner Herr?
So this is for our consultants. What do you make of the 2022 final risk evaluation for 1,4-dioxane by the EPA? And then this month, a supplement draft just before the final publication. Have you had an opportunity to review all 1,016 pages?
Unfortunately, we've been on this for a few days, so we haven't got through all that yet. But I will say, I think the general industry take on this is there's not a lot of good information on it, right? So there's history, but we're engineers, we're not scientists, we haven't done studies of the impact of individual zones, and this unfortunately takes sometimes a lifetime to measure the impacts of these things. And I think as a resident, we all have those concerns, but it's very difficult when sometimes things are a moving target in our industry.
And that's a good point. It takes a while for the science to catch up. And to give you what probably most of us in this room understand, I'll use my industry as an example. Many people may debate that the internal combustion engine maybe was one of the best inventions of all time. But then as science caught up, we began to understand that that great thing that had been developed had some bad side effects to it. We went to unleaded fuel. Then more science came to bear and said, well, you need catalytic converters. Now more science has come to bear, and we have engine management systems to help mitigate that. Now we're looking at electric vehicles like Commissioner Constantine drives. I get there sooner than he does, by the way. My carbon footprint, of course, is a little heavier. But the point being is, when I read through all of this, unregulated substances in water seems to be in the tens of thousands. To Commissioner Lockhart's question, I've probably read more about this than I really care to read about. And that comes from somebody who lost their wife at age 54 with brain cancer. And you always have that question, why, how come? Was it something she ate? Was it something she was exposed to? And so it's very important to our citizens that we get these answers, but I think we've got to set a reasonable expectation. We may not get all the answers to this question until science catches up. And to that nth degree, I think is why, in the meantime, if we're going to struggle and have to spend dollars with this, and I'm not saying necessarily punitive, but this is going to fall into ratepayers. unless we want to spread it out across non-rate paying utility users. I think we're all prepared to probably do that, push come to shove, but I think we have to look at the reimbursement side of that considerably. And the dashboards, I've been banging on the table since 2018 when I arrived here. And I think we finally actually got some, but they'll be great for all of us and our citizens if we could ultimately get there. But I think until science catches up, it's if I'm reading what I think I'm reading in these final risk evaluations for 1,4 dioxin and the supplement, they're all a lot of peer-reviewed material. I don't know that we have all the answers yet.
If I may add, there was a lot of discussion on funding. There's been a lot of discussion on sourcing. One thing that we advise all of our clients to do is, whether it's 1,4-dioxane, PFAS, or something else, as a utility, you are not the only ones challenged with this. There are utilities in Central Florida. This particular topic that we're talking about today is a regional issue, but this happens across the nation. So advocacy, joining forces with other utilities and other agencies is absolutely critical to communicating these messages to the regulatory agencies, not only to tackle the issue of the source itself, much as the settlement that you referred to earlier, the PFAS settlement, but for the funding aspects. Advocacy to secure the funding so that folks like Lake Mary who upgraded their plant, should you all decide that an upgrade is necessary, that the funding is there.
Thank you.
Commissioner Herr and then Commissioner Delary.
I just want to say that was a rock star statement. That's the most important thing we've heard so far today.
Can my husband get a copy of this?
You can, yeah. How do you know he's not home watching it? And if he is, you should question why. Is there a difference between Lake Mary's methodology for reduction in the level, in the outcome, and our methodology, which is dilution? I know they're two different processes, but our methodology has been to dilute to a below the reporting level need, and their methodology has been to install a new system, which was required because of the span of the issue there, and at some point, God forbid, may be required elsewhere. But the outcome, if the level goes down, is it important how you got there?
I would say, probably no. The outcome is to provide to your customers a safe drinking water, whether that's through dilution or some other means. I think that's a decision you need to make, and there are byproducts associated with treatment that also need to be tackled. Comparing the Lake Mary situation to yours is much different because of the high concentration. So at the end of the day, as you just described, the goals are the same.
Understood. And then for potential fear of opening up an entire other can of worms, but while we're here, I'm going to do it. Since we're talking about water supply, I would like us to investigate fluoride.
Sure.
There is all sorts of science now that is different from what the science was when I was a kid and kids' teeth were rotting out of their heads, including my own, mostly because of what we were eating. That is different, and perhaps we need to get in front of that. While we're doing this, let's look at that as well. And there may be other things that you may suggest that we need to be considering, but I certainly know that that's one of them.
I move to Commissioner Delary.
You done?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Delary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm looking at your different tasks. Can I have your attention, please? I'm looking at your different tasks, and I'd like to understand it a little bit better. The one I'm concerned about is Task 3. You're identifying treatment options, which is fine, but are we also identifying the potential to actually clean up the issue? Is that not in one of the options at all? Because I don't see that.
If the question is our task to look
Well,
into...
I'm not addressing you, I'm addressing staff.
Oh,
because
I'm sorry.
Staff's the one that sets the task, not you.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Okay, I'll start from the beginning again. So on task 3, we're identifying treatment options, okay? So the question that I have is, that's the treatment after the water comes out of the ground. Are we talking at all looking at the aquifer or the hydrological aspects of the aquifer?
Yes, I mean, that's part of what they're going to be assessing, is looking at the remedial action plans, what the Siemens is doing as far as what they're pulling out, and looking at our wells that we have and other options.
So we're going to be looking at it hydrologically, correct?
Yes.
Because I don't see that listed.
Oh, okay.
And then are we also talking about, instead of just treatment, a combination of actually treating the actual contaminant in the aquifer as well as treatment? Because I don't see that in the task at all either.
We will be, yes, we've talked to them about looking at that, looking at what is actually being done as far as the source plume. And I have been in contact with Lake Mary, and I understand that Siemens does have an active remediation system. So one of the things we'll have them looking at is and Danielle Corey from Lake Mary told me that Siemens, or whoever they are now, were upgrading the system, so we'll find out what activities are going on with that to see what they're actually doing to remediate the source.
Okay, so that's the reason I wanted to see the map with the plume, because I wanted to know if there's a way to actually control the plume as people are pulling water out of the aquifer. I know we're all nodding our heads, but can I actually see a more detailed scope?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, and then we're going to be getting a list, as you stated, other utilities that are affected with this chemical as well, correct?
Yes.
In its region?
Mm-hmm.
All right. I look forward to seeing that information.
All right.
Okay. I have another question, unless someone else has a question. We heard ozone. I know we utilize ozone. How is the ozone we utilize different from the ozone that Lake Mary's utilizing?
I believe it's the same, but I think they add another process onto the system, whether it's UV or peroxide, but I'll let the experts.
So that is the fortunate thing about this situation, is that your Markham plant already utilizes ozone for constituents that are already in the water. One of the commonly used treatment processes for 1,4-dioxane is an advanced oxidation procedure where you would add peroxide to the ozone to really amplify that oxidation process. So one of the options we would potentially look at is adding peroxide to the ozone system to enhance that existing system.
Great. Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? I do have a request of the board.
Just a follow-up to that, does what I will call hyperoxidation create the possibility of a different outcome, meaning a negative outcome from that chemical reaction?
1,4-dioxane is notoriously difficult to treat, and we will look that and come back to you with that information. I'm not actually the treatment expert. We can find that out, but as far as I understand it, it really just destroys the chemical constituent itself.
And Madam Chairman, if I could just add in to Commissioner Delari's point as well, since we were made aware of all this, that's what I said, everything was on the table, and that's what I directed staff to. So as stuff comes through, their assessment, if there's other things that they need or want us to look at, I have given them full authority to look at that, because when they come back to this board and to provide not only the assessment and evaluation, but recommendations and options to this board, I don't want them to be held back on anything, because there may be some things that we just don't know yet that we will uncover.
Commissioner Zembauer.
Does that include legal activity, legal action? And the reason I ask that is because there are obviously individuals in this country that have been down this path and litigated these matters who have some of the front edge cutting experts in everything we're talking about that would come to us without engaging costly consultants.
Yes. Mr. Chiplock.
So I think I'd like to know that and what the thought process is there. And maybe we're too soon, but
I don't think so. Mr. Chiplock.
I think we're on that doorstep, ready to knock.
Let's let the county attorney update you on what he's already done.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a couple of items that I was going to do under the county attorney's report, but I think they're more pertinent to this discussion. In regards to the dioxin, we have sent out several letters to area environmental attorneys asking for their specific experience in I-4 dioxin, so we could look at the pool and see which is the best fit to add to our team and what our needs are going to be, because again, we're still formulating that with our technical experts. So we are on that track. And as far as the PFAS, there is federal legislation, and the 3M company has settled and agreed to pay $10.3 billion to settle lawsuits related to the PFAS contamination in public drinking water around the United States. The settlement will compensate water providers for pollution and PFAS compounds and help others to cover the costs of filtering and testing systems. We have been in contact with counsel from Schutz and Bowen, who are involved in that to keep apprised of the latest developments, and we are expecting an announcement from the State Attorney General's office in the next few weeks for an opportunity to join that class action, so we will keep you apprised as that
Great.
continues.
That was the question I had posed a couple weeks ago, so thank you. That answers my question.
Yeah, that's great. Anything else for him? One of the things that I think we have all learned, I'm continuing to learn loud and clear, is that we have multiple different agencies with different opinions, with different enforcement levels or no enforcement. And I think the one thing that every local government and local utility would significantly benefit from is the federal government, the EPA, coming out with an advisory level for water that is consistent for everyone to follow. This game of individual local governments and local utilities and states setting their own levels based on their own experts is not what's best for the American people. So one of the things that I would like to ask my colleagues for permission to do is to send a letter to the administrator of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, Michael Reagan, asking for the EPA to give local governments that much needed guidance. Commissioner Zembauer?
I'm not against that, but as I read through the final assessment the EPA has done and the summary that was just released this month, I think they're already there.
Well, I read the same.
As far as they're going to go.
Right. I read the same, and the one thing that is not mentioned is specifically drinking water. And I think that's what we're specifically...
Oh, yes, it is.
Well, not in the summary that I read just today. So for our purposes, I think for this conversation, we are asking specifically for the parts per billion for drinking water. The car guy stuff, love you, mean it, but I'm not as into the car guy use of the 1,4-dioxane as I am, moms making formula from their tap water. So I'm looking for consensus from the board to send a letter to the EPA requesting that they provide guidance for us.
Let me split the baby. I would certainly concede to that as long as we verify that it doesn't already exist, which our experts can do that. You verify that a drinking water level for reporting and safety doesn't exist, we send the letter. How about that?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm not against sending a letter.
Is there anyone who objects to sending the letter?
Motion to approve sending a letter on behalf of the commission.
I can't see behind you, so I'm not sure what Commissioner Constantine's thoughts are. That's why I was asking.
Listen, any action that we need to take is, obviously to protect our citizens. So I have no problem in sending a letter to the EPA if the information does not already exist, as we've already talked about.
Okay. Commissioner Zembauer made a motion. Is there a second?
I said second.
Second, Commissioner Delary. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, and I will get drafts of this letter to each of your offices so you can review it before it's sent, and we'll have our consultants review it as well. All right. Any other items on this topic from the board before we ask for any public comment on this topic?
Maybe a 5-minute break, potty break?
We can take a 5-minute break, but it's got to be 5.
Well, I mean, y'all can continue on. I can go to the little boys' room right back here.
That's true, we could do that. Would everyone like to take a 5-minute break? I just know it's going to be 15. All right, we will recess the meeting, for 5 minutes. We'll come back at 4. Friends, if we could go ahead and have a seat.
4:05.
The 5-minute break does not exist in this chambers. I know it doesn't.
We tried.
Well, and then I got to talking to people too, so I'm just as guilty for sure. Ms. Kuntz has forms for people who would like to speak related to the topic that was a part of this county manager's report. And before you read, if there are other public comments not related to this, we are going to hold those to the end of the meeting like we would normally do. So if you have something that you want to talk about, whatever, that's completely not related to water, we'll do those later. Also, if you don't want to speak, but you want the board to hear your comments, there's a green form in the lobby that you can fill out, and it will be passed down the dais, and we will read your comments, because I know not everybody is comfortable getting up and speaking at a public meeting, especially when there are television cameras in the room. But we do want to hear from you, so please avail yourself of the green form. Before we go to public comment on this item, I'm just going to reread the statement about public participation before this board, portions of it, just to remind everybody that we are operating under policies and procedures of the Seminole County Board of County Commissioners, Section 2.175. And the comments are, all public comments shall avoid personal attacks, abusive language, and redundancy. Disrespectful, rude, irrelevant, or slanderous remarks or disruptive behavior may subject the individual to removal from the board chambers, and the chairman may curtail repetitious comments. You have 3 minutes to speak unless you are speaking in lieu of another group of people who have given up their right to speak, and then you will be given 6 minutes as a member of an official, like a representative of an official organization. And that is actually written in our policies for anyone who would like to see what that actually says, because I don't have it right in front of me, otherwise I'd read it verbatim. So with that, Ms. Kuntz, if you would call the first person who would like to speak.
Emily Turner, followed by Christine Padavin.
And Ms. Padavin, if you wouldn't mind just lining up along the wall behind there so that we're ready to go, and then Ms. Kuntz will call the next two people, and that way we don't have we don't have any walk-up music, so it's not any fun anyway.
Hi, I'm Emily Turner. You have my address?
Please.
1797 Tangle Oaks Court, Lake Mary. I'd like to understand why, after all these years, the county never notified private well owners of the water testing results. These same results were used by the city of Lake Mary to justify a $40 million upgraded water system, but if you were unincorporated Seminole County living in Lake Mary, we had no idea that there would be a need to upgrade your own well water system. I think the county has an obligation to notify residents, especially the ones on well water. The information was there. That's why the county and the city have upgraded their water systems, yet for over 20 years, I've been on a private well and never had privy to any of that information. If this is standard procedure in Seminole County, then it needs to be changed and corrected. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And who's the next person?
Mike Morgan and Mark Nijane.
Good afternoon. I'm Christine Potabon of Paladina International. Used to live at Leatherwood Drive in Altamont Springs, and a longtime resident of Seminole County and currently in Orlando, Florida. Do I get those extra minutes tacked on to my talk? I'm a health advocate and longtime health researcher and toxicity expert. I'm on radio and TV frequently now on anything to do with toxicity, accidental, intentional, or environmental. And I'm a poisoning survivor. So I know from experience what I had to do to stay alive. I would not be here talking to you if I did not detoxify with the help of a trained toxicologist. Most medical doctors do not have this knowledge. And so when people come to them with symptoms of toxicity, the doctor just treats the symptoms with medication, making the situation much worse. I've dealt with chronic and acute toxicity with colleagues, family members, and people as I'm growing my global education service on this important topic. And So I've been in the media about what people can do. I'm here to actually offer assistance to the board, continue to offer my assistance to the media, to any individual or organization that wants this information on how people and even pets and livestock can have those toxins be safely moving out of their body and not have future health issues and reverse all health symptoms. I've seen my colleagues reverse their cancer in 6 months with detoxification. So I'm here to offer solutions. I'm happy to talk to Ms. Omberg about some of the new forensic methods that I had to learn in my cases, which unfortunately were intentional criminal cases. But I have a lot of information to help people how to stay healthy from any toxin, because in terms of the dioxin and other elements that we have in Florida water, we know the soil is very porous. It absorbs everything from the ground because our aquifers are underground. So it's a concern just in general with water, but with any type of event. So if anyone wants my information, I'm happy to offer it to the board and work with everyone to get this information to the public on what they can do to stay healthy and safe from toxins.
Thank you for being here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Mike Morgan. I live at 1888 Bridgewater Drive in Lake Mary, Florida. And I've heard a lot of great things from this board today on what we're planning to do. And I think that's important. I think we represent water districts all over the country. In fact, we represented the city of Stewart, our firm did Morgan & Morgan, in the lead bellwether trial for the PFAS case that ended up in a $10 billion resolution. And so we've seen this story unfold in neighborhood after neighborhood. And this happens to hit very close to home because it's the water I drink, it's the water my kids drink. But I agree that this is not a level, at least at this point, for panic. It is a level for action, though, and there is some really strong action we can take. This is a problem. The 1,4-dioxane was invented in the 1950s by Dow Chemical. They actually produced almost 100% of 1,4-dioxane in this country. And so when it goes out and it's used for stabilizing and degreaser, and that's how it came back to Siemens, and that's why Siemens was using it to degrease parts. When they do it, they dump it in trenches and it goes into the aquifer. What we need to be able to do here is to create a plan like we did in the city of Stewart, which involves excavation of the soil, because this is a mobile constituent. It's a volatile organic compound that doesn't stick to soil. So it goes straight down, it's persistent, it doesn't biodegrade within our ecosystem, and it's going to get into the aquifer. And so the amount that we can still save from the soil can be excavated, taken up, and out. But then on top of that, what Lake Mary did when they came up with the Siemens problem is they instituted what we've heard from Corolla talk about is the AOP, the advanced oxidation process. And while it can't eliminate, to Chairman's point, it can't totally eliminate. It can take it to a non-detect level. And really in today's world, as we're exposed to all of these different constituents, the best we can do is get the things that we know are likely to lead to cancer out of our water. And there is the technology, it's caught up. The science to eliminate it has caught up. What we don't know is the long-term effects, right? That the only study we've had on 1,4-dioxane is a rat study from 2007, a lab rat study. That's it. And it linked it at some level, at some unknown number, to different cancers, but they don't have any firm science on where that's going to go. But what we do know is we wouldn't want it in our water. And so when we look at who's responsible for this and who should pay for this, the average plant that we've quoted is about $50 million, and it costs about another $25 to run that into the future. Here we have Siemens, and we have Dow, and we have other contributors like the detergent manufacturers of Procter & Gamble that all contribute to our problem we're having today. So I look forward to however we can help in getting this thing solved. Thank you all.
Thank you.
For being here.
Thank you.
Mr. Nejame, and then who is after Mr. Nejame?
Katrina Shaddix and Don Townsend.
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Nejame. I live at 3056 Port Lago Court, Windermere, Florida, 34786. Thank you. I came here to listen, I came here to learn, and I have. There are some things, though, that I think that are more answerable than has been suggested. First of all, as we often hear, a cover-up is often worse than the act. And we need to find out why certain disclosures have not been made to you all throughout the years. In some ways, you all have been handcuffed because you can only share what you know. And I will share with you that I partnered up, my law firm, EJ Law, has partnered up with John Overchuk. Their firm had handled cases in Seminole County concerning this and Siemens in 2006 and 2011. And so there's a 337-page complaint that exists as a public record that addresses many of the issues that are being discussed here. So it's a matter of public. It should have been disclosed. Many of you all should have known about it, not faulting anybody here, of course. But because the lack of disclosure occurred, I think there's going to be a lot of answers, and you can cut through a lot of it. It should also arguably save hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, by identifying that which can be done. And at least give you a breadcrumb of where you need to go to follow the crumbs. With that said, also, there's a lot more to this. You know, you talked earlier, Mr. Chairman, about financial aspects and all. I would share with you that there's a real concern now about, it can be about the money, individually, not just about the people who have suffered losses in their family and their loved ones. We'll get to that. But a diminution of property values is a real issue here that may surface, that deals with tax rolls, that deals with people's, what their value of their homes are, because now there's disclosure requirements, and we can't minimize any more than we can exaggerate the issue. We simply need to know what the truth is and where it leads us. I will share with you that a great concern that I have, and it's personal, we've all been impacted by cancer in our families. I lost my beloved mother about 3 years ago. She smoked in the 60s, stopped in the 70s when the warnings came out. 25 years later, she got lung cancer, and she passed away 3 years ago. We don't know what long-term effects there's going to be here. And all we're talking about with these parts per billion is theoretical. I'm getting calls to my office from families now, and that's not theoretical. Their family members are dying of cancer, and they are not just blindly searching for an answer. They're wanting to know answers. They're not blaming. They're wanting to find out the truth, whatever that truth is. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Katrina Shaddix, 1011 Seneca Oaks, Geneva, Florida, 32732. I'm representing 6,200 members of Bear Warriors United. And first of all, the documents that I sent out, you'll see in the top right corner, there's an article that says Florida tops list for most polluted lakes in the U.S. That came out about a year ago. So we know we are currently battling and dying from fertilizer, herbicide, pesticides, and industrial chemicals like we talked about today, raw human sewage contamination of our waters. We're facing multiple water crises on several fronts happening simultaneously. Overdevelopment for human overpopulation is killing our water supply, and as I said, all of this leads to Florida ranking #1 in the nation for most polluted waters and polluted lakes and surface waters. That's why I included a copy of the letter I signed on today asking the St. John's Water Management District to actually encourage them to better address and enact solutions for the water quality problems plaguing our state. The last legislative session is proof that we are having a water crisis. There's millions, if not billions of dollars now going to what's happening. So hopefully Seminole County can work with the two attorneys that just spoke, and maybe St. John's Water Management District, the state, to get some funding that's needed to clean up our waters. And I thought it was really good, this opportunity to speak, the information that you gave, the quick response, the efforts for transparency, all amazing, and expanding the sampling for 1,4 and PFAS. That's amazing, because this is a huge, huge, huge issue around the country. And I absolutely love and appreciate you for bringing out fluoride. We need that. I hope it can be something that is taken out of our water. I think recently, was it Mims or Titusville, their city council passed a resolution, did not include it in the water. And I'm asking, as a citizen, I brought this to y'all before since we are talking about water quality, water contamination, saving water, chemicals. I hope that you will add sampling for pesticides and herbicides in our water to that. As y'all know, about 2 years ago, a study came out that the majority of manatees have tested positive for glyphosate. That's part of the herbicide that is overused and misused to kill plants. There's also huge lawsuits about that. It's proven to cause cancer. And another chemical, another aquatic herbicide that is overused is Dioxin. And that is applied actually more than glyphosate. And it's applied using taxpayer money. The state of Florida, FWC, spends about $17 million a year. The county also spends money. I tested water and animals and plant samples from Lake Dot after dozens of ducks died and sent them to the lab that figured out the mystery of bald eagles, and they were dying from dicot. And the samples that I got back came back with lethal levels of dicot. This was in one of our own lakes. Is that 3 or 6? It was 3. Oh, yes. So, anyway, it was super sad. I actually collected a dead duck. I took another duck that survived that had severe neurological issues that were stumbling in the streets around Lake Dot to a vet. They drew blood. And this is so overused. When I did a records request to the county to ask for the contracts and for the invoices that the county pays for these chemicals that poison our lakes and our wildlife and our people, I was told that the bill was going to be over $2,000. That tells me that the county is spending a lot of money and has a lot of contracts for these chemicals that are deadly. The most concerning part about Lake Dot, as there were ducks dead in the grass, countless ducks dead for days, there was a child fishing on that dock. He was going to eat a fish that he caught. There were dead ducks not only in the grass but floating in the water. There's a dead turtle. This is something that's extremely, extremely concerning. Just back in Vietnam, they told everyone Agent Orange was safe. Now we know it's not. So many of our veterans died from that. This glyphosate is made by the same company, and it's part of the same chemicals that are making our aquatics herbicide that Agent Orange was made out of. So, hopefully we can learn mistakes from our past. We can add pesticides and herbicides to the sampling. I'd love to help with that, give y'all a great lab that it's an out-of-state lab. And like I said, they are experts in testing for aquatic herbicide poisoning. And as far as costs go, if y'all want to, if that tax, not a tax increase, but the road tax gets on the ballot next year, maybe if you labeled it the water quality and green infrastructure tax and allocated a lot of money to cleaning up our waters and preventing that, I think a lot of people would be super supportive of it. We don't want to call it a road tax because that serves like urban sprawl development. We don't want any more of that. But I think there's a way to do it. I like that y'all are being proactive about that. I hope I can help. I hope the attorneys can help and get our waters cleaned up so we don't have to worry about any of us dying from cancer unnecessarily. Thank you.
I have a question for Ms. Shattuck, so I may, Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr.
On
Zimbar.
the Lake Dot matter, I have a concern about Lake Dot. Do you have some information related to the ducks in Lake Dot? Is that what I'm understanding? You had some blood drawn or
Yep,
necropsy?
I had blood drawn
Can
at
you send
Geneva
that
Oaks.
over to us, please? Because I need to look at that closely. It's in my district, and that's in stark contrast to what FWC and DEP has reported. So if there's information, I'd love to have it.
Yeah, I do have information.
Great.
And I will check with my attorneys to make sure it's
It
okay
might
if I
cost
give
you
it to
$2,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Y'all were going to charge me $2,000 for your record, so.
So are you, do you want to save the animals, or?
Oh, I have said.
Okay.
We'll
Yeah,
address that.
my
We'll-
time.
We'll address it. Thank you
Okay,
very
thanks.
much. Who is after the speaker?
Wafa Esposito and John Tenuto.
All right. Ms. Esposito, are you saying you would not like to speak? Okay. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dawn Townsend, 317 Buttonwood Drive. I'm in unincorporated Seminole County. I've heard a lot of good information about the remedies, and I applaud everybody here on the quick response in providing education, transparency, and honesty. What I'd like to see more of is discussion on industry and development in our county. And is there already currently industry that is already being looked at? Because where we're standing at right now, this inflection point, is because of industry that was here 30 years ago. So what can we do as Seminole County residents now to prevent anyone from the future staying in this moment again, if that makes any sense? I'm concerned about the onset of how to prevent industry from further polluting the waters, because it's going to happen. But I want to know what you have on your books or your procedures and your regulations that will curtail, stop, prevent that from occurring again. Because yes, we need money for future keeping the water clean, but we also need to look at the other side of the remedy coin, is prevention. So speaking of that, I am a representative and ambassador for Water for Life through FloridaRightToCleanWater.org, and I'd like to present this amendment that we are trying to get on the ballot in 2024. We need 900,000 petitions of registered voters statewide, because as you know, what we're dealing with here locally is across the states. But Florida has a right to clean and healthy waters, and the ballot summary is this. This amendment creates a fundamental right to clean and healthy waters. The amendment may be used to sue state executive agencies for harm or threatened harm to Florida's waters, which include aquatic ecosystems. The amendment defines terms, identifies affected constitutional provisions, and Article 4 governing the executive branch provides for civil action enforcement, allows attorneys and expert witness fees to prevailing plaintiffs, and provides equitable remedies, including restoration of waters. And I'd like to just present this to you, and one day I'd like to hear that Seminole County has the best, cleanest water in the state of Florida. That is my hope and my goal in doing this activity as a citizen for this county. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. And who is after the speaker? If you'll give us just one moment.
I'm sorry.
Cindy Holler and Nancy Harmon and Joe Humphreys, and that's all I have.
Okay. If you ladies wouldn't mind coming forward, that would be great.
We're good to go? Okay.
If you would state your name and address for the
Yes,
record,
ma'am.
please.
John Tenuto, local homeowner. This is Andrea Hers district. I want to thank you for being proactive when I called you guys. And at first, I was very upset about the whole fact with this pollution in the water. I've been living in Florida in the 60s. Lee Constantine, you've been a very strong advocate of environmentalism your whole life when you were involved over there in Altamont Springs. I want to thank you for that. The rest of you, I don't know what your background is as far as environmentalism, but if we don't have good water or good air, what the hell good is it living here? We all love Florida. My concern is that maybe we're loving it to death. Growth isn't always the answer. We just need to manage what we have, not get more of a tax base and more congestion and that sort of thing. But anyway, I have some questions regarding these chemicals. And one is, since this pollution occurred with Siemens over there in Lake Mary, has that percentage been dropping? One, right? A couple of you alluded to this already. Is it growing, right? Is it growing? One of you alluded to, I believe one of the lawyers was, hey, get the stuff out of the ground while you can. I agree with that as much as possible, because this stuff, like it says, Florida's like a big sieve. Everything goes down into the aquifer. So eventually you're going to wind up showering with it and bathing with it and drinking it. So my concern is that. So is the percentage of the dioxin, is it dropping along with the other PFAB and the other chemicals that we're not familiar with or just now learning about? And what's the long-term effect on what it will take to clean it? In other words, can we clean this water out of the aquifer? Are we able to remove it at some point? Is the water going to be clean at some point? These are all really important questions that I have as a homeowner. We are on wells over in River Oaks, on the west end of the county, right there against the Wekiva River. I love the Wekiva. I've been involved with a lot of cleanups over there in the past as a citizen, only because I care about what we have and what we're doing. But if we're messing in our mess kit, what are we doing as citizens? Seriously. So I hope you guys will move in the right direction. I like what I've heard today. It's encouraging. I just hope it isn't BS. I just hope you guys are legitimate in what you're doing and moving forward. You guys inherited a big mess from others way before you. I understand that. But now we've got this mess that we have to solve as citizens and as county government and city government. And I hope we can do so in a positive way. The only thing I'll say in closing is, remember, when you make decisions in fear, it's usually the wrong decision.
Correct.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Agreed. Ms. Holler?
Thank you. Oops, too loud. Thank you, Cindy Holler, 1731 Beacon Drive, Sanford. Unincorporated, I'm happy to say that talked to Joyce Biddle this morning, and we will be having our private well tested. So we just want to know, we just want to know. So anyway, there's a couple of different things here. So I know this has been touched on. I'll just touch on it briefly. Industry needs regulation. It's local responsibility. Chemicals must be obviously properly used and contained. So that's kind of like, pretty basic. I think good regulations over our water are really important. Obviously, it's been stressed today. No selective responsibility. So I would ask respectfully for a building moratorium within the affected areas until there's resolution. And I'd like to know, as we go forward, what the resolutions are going to be. I don't think there needs to be a hold off on building storage units, but where people, drink water and live, I think is important. I was asked next door by a couple of neighbors, is it possible to have an evening meeting? So some people felt like, that it was, that would be beneficial because there were people who wanted to be here who couldn't be here. So I'm just throwing that out there. And then I was asked by an engineer, what are the depths of the water that the samples were taken from? And so maybe county staff can respond to that. And then the other thing I wanted to say is I also, for the last few years, have been a ambassador for clean water, and I live by the St. Johns River, and just water quality is just near and dear to my heart. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Holler. Ms. Harmon? And then Mr. Humphreys.
And then we have Alexander Duncan would like to speak on this as well.
On this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Nancy Harmon, 752 Pioneer Way, Geneva, Florida. I really appreciate the discussion today. Very good points. The one thing that I want to make sure is very clear when we talk about the EPA and you go to the EPA is basically a political organization. It is run by whoever's in charge. If you know, they've been defunded the last, the last administration, this administration, they're getting money for this and that. But they're going to regulate based on who pays their bills and who hushes them, not who encourages them. And the water issues that we've experienced, the water and other contaminants, you can look it up. EPA will give you the most reasonable approach in order to satisfy whoever it is that's in charge. People do not want to be regulated. That's why EPA does not regulate very well. So from the county standpoint, and what you all are talking about is looking and taking charge of the issue, trying to ensure that our future here in Seminole County is better water-wise than it was before you found out about this problem is very important. I can tell you, and you all know this, do not depend on the federal government to answer your mail. It's not going to happen. So we, the citizens, have to take charge along with you, our commissioners. I like what Commissioner Zimbauer's approach. I like Commissioner Herr. Look forward, look back. If we have a blend of forward and back, we're going to find the money if we need it. and we will, to address the issues, and we can also find the money in the future through grants and funds of that nature for future issues, because this isn't the only chemical we're going to find. This isn't the only issue that we're going to be presented with. As water becomes more toxic, as Katrina stated, our wells get their water from the ponds. What do our stormwater ponds do? It fills our aquifer. So, and even our, and I know that doesn't, you don't like that, Amy, but honest to God, you know, it does drain there. So the other thing is that our lakes drain into the river. Our lakes drain into the aquifer. Whatever gets put in there, it's going to go in our bodies. But I think, based on what I've heard, our utilities department has already been forward active on that. They've already put in systems to help prevent a lot of this contamination or reduce it. And I think they do have a key handle without even the contractor. They have a key handle on what needs to be done. So I'm looking forward to a quicker resolution than many would think this would happen because of your actions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Humphries?
Who's next?
Joe Humphreys, 883 Cardinal Point Cove, Sanford, Florida. I'd like to begin by commending Mr. Gray and our dear Kim Ornberg for their perfect timing on their new positions. So they're going to earn their paychecks, but I do have great respect and trust in their abilities to help us wind our way through this. Governments exist to serve the people. It's real simple. Openness, accountability, and honesty define government transparency. Our entire political process is founded on trust in our system. We've certainly seen and heard an awful lot of that over the last 2 or 3 years, given some of the other issues that we've had to deal with on a national basis. I agree with Commissioner Hearn that we have to go forward, not backwards. History only goes one direction, forward. And I think we've certainly made some strides here today. But that said, in order to fix a problem, you have to understand what the problem is. And again, I think we've done an awful lot to identify those issues. But we also have to understand, well, if the car's broken, why is it broken? How did it get there? As Commissioner Zembauer mentioned, we've been dealing with these issues in this county for quite a number of years. This is an article from the Orlando Business Journal from 1996, when somebody who I know a number of you know very well, Juno Palucci, sued Siemens for contamination of his warehouse in Sanford. This is not new.
Right.
Now, this, I believe it was settled in 2001, I think is when they finally got to a settlement. But the bottom line is, what people are asking me is, why now? Why this didn't just start? I heard from a lady today. She worked for the Seminole Environmental Services Department for 25 years. Her husband worked at Siemens. He was an engineer. He died of cancer. And her comment was, as somebody who worked at the environmental services for this county, we knew about this problem years ago. This is not new. So the question becomes, where did it happen to the transparency over the last 25 or 30 years? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Humphries. Mr. Duncan?
H. Alexander Duncan, P.O. Box 620092, Oviedo, Florida. So I just came to say, like, first of all, I was born on the river, and I was the president of the Mud Lake Water Association and vice chairman of Seminole Soil and Water. So we're going to make sure y'all know I know what I talk about water. Now, You can't sit here all day talking about what's unregulated by the EPA and the state and then say, but we're living up to the regulations of the EPA and the state. It don't work that way. Okay, that's one. Why should we believe you now? You got the first report in 2013. It didn't come out in the water quality report until 2015, and water quality reports come out every year. You're going by some data on slides 5 and 6 that the lady clearly stated was collected by Brown and Caldwell for Siemens. They have nothing to do with me as a citizen. They was doing that for Siemens. So, that's that. There seems to be a lot of blaming the media, and we didn't know. It's just like a lot of excuses. When at the end of the day, you know, the article just came out to hold people to account on what's been in the water. So I'm just saying, I know it sounded good, like the presentation Ms. Orenberg gave, but it was really just a lot of fluff. You know, like, what data did Seminole County pull? Not what data did a private company pull for a private company that y'all just provided to public citizens. So that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Like, so when people talk about transparency, I'm not naming names, but a couple of y'all was already elected officials when this came up. So, I mean, we just being honest. So all that we didn't know, somebody knew something at some point. Because now a whole bunch of information that we have years, over a decade of data on, is out. So, you know, unless we're gonna run with conspiracy theories here from the board, obviously somebody knew something within the government and at every level. So my conclusion is you guys gotta do a little better. I'm gonna be on this water issue now, okay, because I feel like you guys are gonna need to be held accountable, because you're still out here giving us some fluffy stuff like task 3 is to find potential funding sources. Listen, we pay enough in taxes that you shouldn't worry about the money. Just clean the water, address the issue, fix the problem. Okay? Thank you, guys. I'll see you later.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. I'm going to, if you all don't mind, move directly to District Commissioner reports, just for Commissioner Zembauer to do his report if we could, because he needs to leave here now.
Understood. Thank you very much for the point of privilege.
And so, Commissioners, I hope you'll be okay with that. There may be some other comment for everyone who's leaving the room. There may be some other comment later, but there we go.
A point of good news, according to Stacker.com, Seminole County is the 3rd least cancer county in the state. On a good note.
That's a good note.
I need to make an appointment to the Seminole County Port Authority Board.
Excuse me, Commissioner Zembauer, if I could ask you all to please leave quietly because we are conducting business and Commissioner Zembauer is making motions. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to appoint Mr. Stephen Powell to the Seminole County Port Authority Board, who will be taking Susan Sherman's remaining term to December 31st, 2024. I would also...
That's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Herr. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
I would like also to move approval to send a resolution of appreciation to Ms. Susan Sherman for the time she has served on the Seminole County Port Authority Board.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Zembauer, second by Commissioner Herr. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, fellow commissioners, for giving me the latitude to get that done early. I'm going to spend a week or so with my grandchildren, so I'm really looking forward to that. So thank you all very much. I appreciate everything else in District 2 is perfect.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Stay out from under the horses.
Yeah, my
no
wife already
horses.
told me no more horses.
No more horses. All right. Thank you all for
Thank
that
you.
latitude. Safe travels, Commissioner
Thank
Zembauer.
you.
Back to the county attorney's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of things I'd like to report on. First is several weeks ago you asked about hunting on county property. We did some research. The short answer to the question is yes, it can be allowed. We must partner with FWC in order for that to happen through a process. That being said, there is a provision in the upcoming Seminole Forever ordinance that would allow evaluation on a case-by-case basis if you did want to allow hunting on a temporary basis on those lands. Again, it is an involved process, and we do have to coordinate with FWC, but that door is left open for further discussion.
Thank you.
Next, we received a letter last week about our aggressive panhandling ordinance, Seminole County Code, Chapter 232. It was a letter from Southern Legal Counsel questioning the validity of our ordinance. We believe it is firmly legal. We have it under analysis. We'll present our recommendations on how to respond to that letter at the August 8th meeting, because they are expecting an answer by August 11th.
Okay.
And then finally, I'd like to report that in the Winter Spring storage case, the rezoning that you did a few weeks ago, all the appeal periods have passed in that item, so that is a final zoning decision now. And that ends my report.
All right, great. Thank you very much. Any questions for the attorney? Okay. District Commission reports 5, District 5.
I'll make it brief. I'll start from the one that's the most amusing, and that is we did a ribbon cutting for the catio, which is apparently a place where cats can play at the Animal Services Center. I wanted to give a huge thanks to the staff, to all of the donors that made that possible, but mostly for the staff that was super smart and aimed the fans in the right direction so that I didn't have a full-blown allergy meltdown on camera. I was not petting the cats. They seem to be rather enthralled, and it is a wonderful place for people to go and adopt, and we have several. I would welcome everyone to go hang out on the catio and bring one home with you. I also attended the first annual State of the Schools that was hosted by Seminole County Public Schools. It was really exceptionally well done, remarkable information that was shared, and I hope to see that get bigger and bigger every year. So congratulations to the superintendent and the school board members for making that happen. And it's interesting to me, it's like an aha moment. They hired a new communications person who said, "Why don't we do this?" I can't even imagine that it was never done before. What they're doing is way more interesting than what we're doing, quite honestly. It involves 67,000 children. So it was really remarkable. I passed down the dais earlier, request from Katrina Howe for written public input about a library fine-free system for your information only. It was a request that came into the office, and we shared it. And last, I would like to give a shout out to a couple of different folks. This is to our team, Kristen, who's done remarkable work since he's been here, to the folks at Bookertown for being patient with us and for tolerating me while I listened to what can't be done. And then we brought in a new set of eyes who said it can be done, and the retention ponds are cleaned out to a much better standard than they have historically been, and we are on a path to maintaining them. So thank you to Darren and Kristen, and mostly thank you to you all from Bookertown for being patient with me. More to come. You might have to be a little more patient for whatever the next mistake it is that I'm going to make, but I'll be there with you, figuring it out. And that's it, Chairman.
All right, great, thank you. District 1.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 2 quick updates. I know I updated you the last meeting about the Lockwood Boulevard sewer line replacement. And due to some increased rain that we've had over the past week and weekend, the contract has been slightly delayed, but it's still kind of on track within a 2-week window, so they're moving very quickly with that as well. We're keeping everyone informed via the website that we have that's active and interactive, so people can actually see what's happening real time. And then I also briefed everyone a week or so ago regarding Brumley Road and about the accident that was there. Staff has been very proactive, traffic engineering, and we're going to be having another site community meeting out there within the next week or so to discuss it with the neighbors as well. End of my district report.
District 3.
On July 12th, the staff I attended at Lyman High School had an update community update to Rolling Hills about what we intended to do in the future, as well as working with them. We wanted to ensure that that not only we were communicating properly, but they knew that their input was important to us. As I said, well over 100 people attended. It was really exceptional. I wanted to give a shout out to Richter and his group. Jean, you only sent one person from transportation, and that was where all the questions were. So, but I think that they're very excited about it. Obviously, they're just a little apprehensive. They just want it to happen, and we all know that it takes time, and there was a few little things like the hurricane that happened. So I think we're on track again, and I hope that they appreciate the fact that it's being so well kept, and they enjoy the use of that property there. I also, on a personal note, Bob, I'm very sorry.
I'd rather not discuss it.
Okay, I understand. That's all.
But thank you.
I'm going to skip right to my chairman's report. I have a couple of different things that I wanted to mention. Actually, Patty's going to. Sorry, Patty. Patty wrote all these things for me to talk about my district report, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to focus on some of the things that we've talked about today, because I do really think that some of the public comment that was brought up is important for us to give some feedback and direction to the county manager, because there were some very good questions there, and I just want to make sure that we're following up on those. Private well owners are a significant concern. And while I certainly understand the citizen wanting to be notified, I don't think it is our agency that even has a list of well owners. I think that's the Florida Department of Health. Right. So if we could just make sure that we are driving DOH, because they've had some changeover as well in their leadership. I know we all have a lot of private well owners in our districts. Well, Commissioner, in this particular area that's being discussed around the Siemens plant, Commissioner Hers in my district have a lot of private wells.
Can I comment on that?
Yes, absolutely.
So while it is DOH's responsibility, we don't have the list. I do think we have an opportunity on the website where we're to educate around that specific item.
Agree.
So that it's not left out.
And I was hoping to be a little more proactive in the communication, because people with wells don't randomly look on the county's website for information about their wells. They think because they have a water softener, the guy that comes and replaces the filter and puts salt in once a month, that their water is great coming from their well. So, and I'm speaking from a little bit of experience. So I just feel like we need to do something with our communications team in a proactive manner about that. That's just my takeaway on that. And Ms. Shaddix, we talk about water being, it's all one water, and we lost Gabby Milch. Oh, there's Katrina. But we've been talking about this whole one water concept, and totally agree that a one-stop shop for a dashboard, our water shed atlas, having not just surface water and lakes but also our drinking water, and so I know we're combining all of this water conversation into the same conversation, and I think it's good because it's all connected, but it can also be dangerous, because when we say water, we don't know if people are thinking the water that's coming out of my tap or the water that's running into the gully next to my house, or the water. So something around that I think would be very important, and completely separate and apart from water. This is not the first time I've heard of a $2,000 bill for a public records request. And I'm not sure who puts dollar figures on those, but it seems to me like just asking for contracts, that's like a photocopy thing for someone to do. So I'm not, and there may be more to it than that. So before the county attorney's office gets defensive, I'm sure there's more to it, but it's not the first time I've heard it. So if we could just research that and get back to the board, maybe that would be helpful. And I swear Katrina and I are not in cahoots on the penny tax and having water quality be a topic, but that is definitely, I completely agree with you. The topic of preventing future industrial pollution, I think, is something that we have to talk about. And again, there are so many different agencies that regulate this. What is our role? So I would love if the county manager, if you and your team could come back to us with what would the county's role look like in that? It's certainly starts with our purview of planning and zoning, but what other types of things might there be? I don't know. As far as digging out the ground, and this, this all comes back to the whole who knew what when, right? That was a big topic, and there's this assertion that there's been this huge conspiracy, but yet a cover-up, but yet everyone seemed to cite newspaper articles about contamination. It's really hard to keep a secret that's being covered in the media. So I'm somewhat perplexed about that piece. Rear view mirror, front windshield, we do need to do both to the level that is appropriate in my mind and helpful to move the ball down the field. All of these suggestions are great suggestions in the sense that they need to be a part of Ms. Ornberg's teams and Carollo's teams. Can we or can't we? But I think we really need you to tell us what's reasonable. Is going onto someone's private property and digging out all the ground after it's already been remediated to whatever degree reasonable? Is that even illegal? I don't know. As far as meetings being held after 5, this was not a public hearing item. This was a presentation for the county manager to educate the board on what's been happening. So while every meeting is open to the public and available for public comment, anyone that was not able to make it here in person can always watch. We stream live. It's on the county's website. We have a YouTube page. There's never a good time to have a meeting for everyone. There's elderly folks who don't drive at night. There's folks who can't get babysitters after school. We've tried very hard to accommodate as many people as possible, and we're never going to find the perfect time for everyone. So, but the content is out there. It's available, and we are always able to be reached via email, phone, smoke signal, you name it. You can reach out to us. So those are just my takeaways on the public comment items. Commissioner Haar?
I have several takeaways on the public comment items as well. You hit a bunch of them. I do think the comments made by Mr. Morgan with regard to Dow Chemical and their experience in this, that needs to be explored. I do think that I would like for somebody to tell me whether we should be sampling for glyphosate and diquat, and I'm sure I'm saying that wrong, so I'm sorry, but it's a phonetic spelling up here. There was a question about the depth of the sampling, probably reportable. I do think that there's an opportunity here to create our own path that may be a little different from what the federal government does to protect us all. I'll throw this out there because, sometimes my mind wanders during these meetings. And I do think maybe we need to do a public campaign about if you dump it, plan to drink it. Because that's the reality of this, and most people don't realize that. And at the end of the day, there were humans dumping this in the backyard of Siemens. It wasn't machines. And then I would like somebody to pull out whatever it was that was referenced about Gino Paolucci and Siemens, because I really don't want to take the time to do that, but I think all of us should see it, and we ought to be looking at the same material. So it would be interesting to see that as well.
So after the water topic, I do want to bring up let you all know, fellow board members, that I have been asking the county attorney's office to talk about the timing of a shade meeting relative to what I'll refer to as the no-work contracts related to Joel Greenberg. I think we have not had an opportunity as a board to meet to strategize legal options with our team, and so I've asked the county attorney to please bring to us at the appropriate time a request for a shade meeting, and so I just wanted to let you know that I have gone down that path with him. It may be appropriate to wait. Well, I think now with the timing, we would have to wait until Ms. Latour is on board at this point, but yes. But I for the county's interests, I have been and will continue to be, except for this afternoon, at the trial at the federal courthouse all this week. So if there's consensus from the board to continue down the path of asking for a meeting with the attorneys, could we get that on the record?
Do you want a motion?
Please.
I'll make a motion to have a shade meeting with regard to this issue.
Second.
Second.
I have a question for the county attorney. Is
Yes,
that the
sir.
appropriate process?
The process typically is that the attorney requests the shade
I've ran into
meeting.
this before, that the board doesn't ask for a shade meeting, the attorney does.
That is correct. Plus, the issue is that, and I'll let Mr. Applegate address it, but before he does, shade meetings, we did look into that, require pending litigation, okay, that we are a part of.
I understand
And
that.
at
That's
this
why I'm
time, there
asking
is
these
no
que-
pending
that's why I'm asking these
litigation.
questions now.
So-
Because I don't want a proposed shade meeting to become unshaded.
Right.
Correct. So that is an issue we are looking at, but at this point in time, there is no pending litigation for a collection against any of the potential defendants, so.
But I think the request was for you all
to request.
For you all to request it at the
Figure it
right
out.
time.
Right. But
Here's my problem, is I continue to bring it up with individuals, but I can't direct anyone to do anything individually. Our county attorney's office can only take direction from this board. So I was wanting for there to be enough interest publicly expressed among all of us so that we can all be on the same page that we would like to pursue whatever
Don't
the next steps
misunderstand me,
would
Madam
be.
Chairman. I think there's plenty of interest for that, but for us to have a motion to tell the county attorney to have a shade meeting, there could be some legal ramifications that I want, so I'm
We
asking.
can- Yeah, we can change
So I'm asking
the motion.
the attorney.
If you-
I will take that motion to mean you would like us to explore the issue of potential recovery stemming from the Greenberg transactions, and we will look at that and report back in an appropriate manner to each of you.
Does the
Mr.
motioner
Applegate?
agree with that interpretation?
agrees.
And does the seconder?
Yeah, I'll
Yes.
withdraw the second.
Okay.
You know, I mean, well, no, if that's going to be the motion, yes, now with this new information, I think all of us, know, and in talking to the attorney, I thought we were already looking at all options and pursuing that. So, I don't have any problem in them continuing to do so.
So, Commissioner Delary, go ahead.
I just want to make sure that we're clear that the county attorney, I think if the chairman speaks to the county manager, or if the county attorney is actually speaking to us, that there should be enough interest that the county attorney will figure out when the proper time is legally to ask for a shade meeting.
And that's the motion.
There
And I think the second.
can't be a motion to do that.
That's not what I'm hearing from the attorney. The attorney, speak again. Did we hear you wrong?
I think
If you'll wait,
Applegate
just wait a minute, we're not going to have a five-way dialogue up here right now. Let's hear from Mr. Chipak, and then I'll recognize you, Mr. Applegate.
The purpose of a shade meeting under the statute is limited to pending litigation. Correct. Pending litigation means we have to be the county has to be in an active suit. And then during that suit, we are requesting information from you on litigation expenses and/or settlement offers. That's the limitation on the shade meeting. To discuss potential for bringing a suit against somebody, there is no avenue to have a shade meeting on that issue. So any discussions of that meeting would have to be in the sunshine with the full board.
Okay. Mr. Applegate, and then I'll come back.
So back in November, when I reported that I was able to recoup $1,250,000 plus $109,000 plus not a specific amount, but other defendants who have been ordered to pay restitution in federal court, I reminded all of you that under our system of justice, you need to be very careful. In our system of justice, you're innocent until proven guilty. So I want to be very careful. I told you back in November that we turned over all our files to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, who is investigating whether or not criminal charges can be brought against any entity or individual. That investigation is still ongoing. I wish I had a magic wand to move it forward faster, but that's what the process is right now. So I have briefed all of you on that point. I did it publicly, and over the course of several months, we've had conversations individually about where we are in the process. So Mr. Chiplock is right. Until there's an active case where we're a party, under the Florida statute, we cannot have a shade meeting. But I will be happy, as I know Paul will be happy, to answer any question that you have about where we are on matters. I think it is, again, I have 5 more weeks, and some of you may be happy about that. But I can tell you that no one thought we would get $1.5 million back.
And we're so grateful for that, Mr. Applegate.
Right.
That is wonderful.
And that covers, you can look at that 2 different ways. It covers more than what our auditors said or claimed that was spent on consultants improperly. And yet we still turned over our files. Now, for the civil actions, would require authorization from this board. Ideally, the best way to get restitution from anybody is if FDLE did find reason to file or suggest that criminal charges be filed, because then we can get restitution, hopefully. The civil action, you're going to hear from our outside counsel, who will say, how much do you want to spend to go against what may be empty wells?
And I think that, Mr. Applegate, is the point of the conversation where you and I hit an impasse, because this board has to have a conversation to determine what that threshold is. And if you want us to have that conversation publicly, I think that's quite dangerous. So Commissioner Herr actually asked to be recognized, and I stepped in front of you. My apologies.
That's okay. So you referenced the criminal proceedings, which are slow to go at best.
I'm sorry?
Slow to go at best, if ever. We don't know what the progress is on that. Completely out of our hands.
Right.
But the fact that we believe there were no work contracts that happened in this county, our citizens are owed money. And I appreciate that we may be going after a no well, but for people to do that and get off absolutely scot-free with no ramifications is completely unacceptable.
And I've never suggested that.
But we're suggesting to wait on the DOE.
Right.
Thank you, FDLE. I knew as soon as it came out, and then I'm like, I can't get the letters in order either.
Well, then what I can suggest
That's
is...
the discussion I think we'd like to have, which, so we are in a conundrum.
Okay.
Perhaps what we do is have Mr. Chiplock and the new county attorney brief us on this and what the best way to proceed is, but I think, I could be wrong, I think what you're hearing is a very loud interest in recovering whatever it is we can recover, and quite frankly, I'm interested in sending a message, don't come around here and do that anymore.
Amen.
Don't do it. It's not cool. And you don't get to walk around this town scot-free like you didn't do anything. Not cool.
I want my $2.
And I've never suggested that.
We're not saying that, Bryant. We're not.
All right.
But inactivity does create a suggestion.
It's not inactivity. I have said from the start, with all due respect, ideally, it would be preferable to wait to see FDOE is going to do anything. And I've been on the phone over the last 2 weeks a couple times and exchanged an email with them about where they are in some investigations. Ideally, that would be the best approach. I'm not saying that. I told you back in November, once they're done, then we can decide what is the best course of civil action to go against whoever we need to go against.
And I think most recently, our conversation was that you had a discussion with Stacey Salmons, and that she said, if you have any desire to move forward, go ahead, because there has been no activity from FDLE, which is an entirely different conversation and not your fault, but it does leave those of us on this board who watch this inactivity, who live here and see what's going on, a great cause for concern. But that Tallahassee issue is a Tallahassee issue, and we still have to do what we need to do.
I agree. The suggestion is timing. That's my point.
Right. So I think what we have just expressed is that we are actively anticipating some way that we can see some movement forward. And I do think there are a lot of things that are going to come out of this trial. Would our participation as a victim, listed as a victim in this current trial, not be litigation that we are currently involved in that we could have a shade meeting over?
No, that's a whole separate matter.
But they're all involved. All those names, all those people, they're all involved.
That case is against one individual right now.
Okay.
So we have a motion and a second on the table.
Thank you. You're calling the question.
Well, I would be happy to withdraw the motion if
No.
that.
I don't think so.
Because I want to make sure that, because we changed the motion.
Right.
And the motion that I think is before us now is what Mr. Chipaw has said.
It is.
So maybe we want to hear the motion from him.
Can we rephrase the
Yeah.
motion for Mr. Chipak?
Yeah.
As I understand the discussion, the motion would be to move forward with a process for recovery of funds from the Greenberg-related cases, and to brief the board on the listing of the funds recovered, the files that have been turned over to FDLE for evaluation for criminal prosecution, to monitor those cases, to hopefully get recovery as part of the criminal suit, and failing criminal suits, then it's a question of timing as to recover what is possible in civil suits if there are no criminal suits.
So as a point of order from the motioner, let me just ask this question. That is a wildly different motion than the last one that I made. So it would seem to me that I should be withdrawing my last motion. The seconder should withdraw his second, and we should
Right.
start from scratch.
And then make that motion.
So what I hear is that Commissioner Herr has withdrawn her motion, Commissioner Constantine, as
I
the
withdrew
seconder,
my
has
second.
withdrawn his second, and
Commissioner Herr will make that motion, because it pleases the attorneys.
Do you need a specific motion, or can you just trust that we will get back with you on that process as I've laid it out?
I will trust you.
Why don't we leave it
But I
like
will
that?
trust but verify.
Yes.
and that's fine if no one wants to make that motion, but my experience has been is that there, and this is nothing with the clerk's office, but if there isn't a motion and a second and a vote, it doesn't always show up in the, it just falls under discussion.
Well, I am making the motion. I thought that the question was a time specific to it. I was not assigning a time specific to the, I trust that you're going to get back to us in a timely manner. That's what I'm trusting.
Yes.
Okay.
So I am making the motion.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner
I think
Herr
it's
has
to
made
you,
the
Mr.
motion
Constantine.
that the attorney has stated, and is there a second?
You know, I'll second it, but I will tell you that I think we're already doing this.
I will tell you, I'm not so sure. So there's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very
And
much for
again,
your
Madam Chairman,
indulgence.
the only reason I was pointing it out is just want to make sure that we do.
That was good. You did great.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Constantine.
Thank you. Since we've diverted from discussion of our districts and going out to all these other things, I just wanted to.
Well, this was under my chairman's report.
Okay, I just want to go back a little bit to the water again and just say that, I really feel that we did make a lot of progress today. I think that our county manager and Ms. Ornberg have a handle on this. I think it's extremely important that we have already made a lot of citizens that were concerned feel better about turning on their taps today. And I do think, like, and others have said it in different ways, that we have a real opportunity here, a real opportunity to move forward and doing something that would that could really make a difference. And what I'm trying to say is, it's not just the dioxin. We've heard so many different, hundreds, thousands maybe, of different toxins in there, that we really find a way that not only we keep our citizens not only informed but alert.
So,
And let me just finish, please.
it's
And
my
that
chairman's
we can,
report.
and that we can also, yes, but Ms. Herr, as well as you, started talking about water and what had happened today, so I want to just repeat, and that I was almost finished, and that not only keep them alert, but also that we do some pretty spectacular stuff in making a difference in water.
That's good. I hope you're going to sleep better tonight. That'll be really good. So the last thing that I wanted to mention under my chairman's report is the Florida Association of Counties annual conference that we had down at the Bonnet Creek. It was another great conference put on by FAC. Congratulations to you, Commissioner Constantine, for finishing up a year as the president of that organization. Well done. And I know we're looking forward to having the Policy and Innovation Conference here in September that we'll be hosting for counties from around the state, so that will be fantastic. The last thing that I will say is that if there are any members of the media or anyone left here who would like to talk about the water issue, Kim Ornberg will be available for technical questions, and I will be available for anything regarding policy or legislation. So we are the two who those questions should be sent to. Do we have any future agenda items?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Do we have any public comment not related to the agenda?
We do. Katrina Shaddix.
God bless you.
Ms. Shaddix, I'm not going to bother reading the public comment statement again, because I know you know it.
Thank you.
But could we keep it to 3 minutes?
Yes, I will
Okay,
try.
thank
Yes. My doggies need to be let out soon. Katrina Shaddix, 1011 Seneca Oaks, Geneva, Florida, 32732. Wanted to give y'all hot off the press. We just made, like the Gardening for Nature booklets that you saw that you love the art of. The same artist did our Peacefully Coexisting with Bears booklets that we're giving out to everyone. I also designed that purple postcard that we are giving out to every new citizen, every new person who moves to the county, to let them be aware they need to secure their trash and know that they are living in bear habitat. And those also go out in the packages when people ask for the straps to secure their trash can. Those two items go in there. And if y'all would like if the county would like Bear Warriors to mail out those postcards to whoever moves in, I think, aren't you doing an insert? We will do that at our own cost. I'll pay for the stamps and everything. If you want me to, anybody who moves to the county, if you want to give me a list, I'll mail them a postcard and straps or whatever they need.
We'll have a conversation with our communications team. I think our messaging is a little bit different, and it probably doesn't hurt that they get it twice.
Okay.
7 impressions to make an impression.
Yeah, and this one has really pretty colors.
It does.
So, also, I just got an email the other day that Division of State Lands received the Lake Monroe Conservation Area Management Plan, and they will consider it at the October 13th meeting in Tallahassee. It's the Acquisition and Restoration Council, and that's a really good news. So I don't know if y'all knew about that. I actually contacted them and said, who do we send letters of support to that? And it's hank.vincent@floridadep.gov. Anyone who wants to support acquiring that land for conservation, contact him. Also found out the Yarborough Ranch property is moving forward. Very, very good. And then as far as that, you're supposed to spray to keep the waters navigable, meaning you have to be able to take a boat through it. But the lakes that were sprayed in Seminole County were not boat lakes. And it was the edge of the pond that was sprayed. And that's a perfect place to have Kim's program, the Living Shorelines. That that specific lake needs a living shoreline, and I don't know who did the contract, and a lot of times, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. These contractors sprayed the entire ring of the pond, killing non-existent they killed the grass. So it's crazy. The other one happened at the base of an eagle's nest tree in Deer Run. No boats. This was like a swampy little area. So there's other ways to remove if they consider problem vegetation, but that Lake Dot had zero vegetation to remove. So it's a huge issue. I want to help y'all with this. Also, I'm suing DEP for the water in IRL sewage contamination, and I want to let y'all know, in one of their motions to dismiss, they pointed the finger at the county commission and said, you should be suing them to give building moratoriums. I'm like, oh, no. So if y'all could help me keep their feet to the fire, and this is their issue that they're responsible for, not y'all, that would help out a lot. I can give you a copy of the complaint, too. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, is there anything else for the good of the order before we adjourn? I only have to wish Mr. Chipak a happy birthday. He will be 1 year older before we meet again.
Thank you
So
very
happy
much.
birthday.
Happy birthday.
All right. Thank you all very much. We're adjourned at 5:20.